Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores. Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Well, welcome everyone to the SMITE Pro League Season 8, all powered by Alienware. And look, I know you just watched the video about it, but I'm going to tell you about Alienware again anyway, because you need to know all of this. It's really, really crucial details for you. We not only want to say thank you to them, because they're our title sponsor, we love that, but also the fact that our pros are playing on these Aurora R10 Ryzen desktops, as well as they're playing on the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz gaming monitors. You heard that right. You can go ahead and check out the rest of that at smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW while you're there. Make sure you do click on your region as well. Just make sure you get all those special discounts. And again, thank you to Alienware for coming on board as our title sponsor for the SPL here in Season 8. You can go ahead and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and go to alienwarearena.com for giveaways and more. So thank you once again to Alienware, and thank you most of all to Mifflin, who stuck around with me after all that waiting room stuff to do a desk.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd do it even if I wasn't supposed to, Gore. I like being here that much.
You were kind of obligated to be here.
My boss told me to be here.
By the schedule. But of course, that is where things end up for all of us. And speaking of schedule, let's go ahead and look at how things are going to shake out here. Leviathans Kings is the first set of the day. Warrior Scarabs going to showcase a couple of role swaps, roster swaps, a lot of things going on here in just the first two sets. Bolts Leviathans, that'll be in studio tomorrow, and of course the rest of the week. I mean, look, Dragons Kings, the Scarabs Valkyries set all of a sudden jumped up on my radar to be a lot more more interesting than it was going to be originally. I'm really excited to see how this week is going to shake out, mainly because there's a lot of things that can change right here. Leviathans, hey, they're number 3. I memed it a little earlier, but the highest Zapman's been in the standings in 2 years is now here with the Leviathans, and the Bolts up there undefeated, although they're not going to get touched today, have a chance to tomorrow. The Kings, though, tied with the Leviathans here, Mifflin. It makes the set a lot more of a weight. Not only do you have some roster swaps for the Leviathans, but you're fighting for second.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And what a great, as you've already highlighted, regular season here from Zapman, finding himself inside of that third seed.
He did win those 2 years that he wasn't in the top 4.
Maybe not exactly where he wants to be then, is it?
It's kind of scary. You're sitting up in the top now. Especially, look, we said it a lot of times there on Waiting Room, but Leviathans do have a bad track record when it gets to your playoffs and your world championship runs. But this, like you said, lucky for them, is just regular season. It's a good case to showcase what they have because the Kings are no team to scoff at. But we have to look specifically at Zap here because he's the fresh one. Now, if you've been watching Zapman stream, you should know he's been queuing with Wrong You the last 3 or 4 days. He has known where he was going, he's known what he's been doing, and he's been trying to get the practice up for it.
Yeah, and I trust Zapman to be able to fit into this team incredibly well. I mean, there's not many players that have been on as many teams as Zapman has, full stop. I mean, just from day 0, SMITE, season 0, Zapman has been playing competitively all the way back then on Curse Gaming, on Root Gaming, on Eager Gaming. I mean, a lot of gaming, really. But I think that Aggro brings up a really good point that we got to discuss on the Waiting Room, in that when Zapman was looking at his best, he was almost acting as this role player, facilitating for guys like Paul. Well, that's been the MO for any team Shinto's been on ever, so I think he's going to fit in just fine. I
mean, this is an interesting dynamic because there's 2 people technically that Zap is replacing here, right? In the short form, it's Hardcore. Hardcore was there. That's the literal replacement. Long term, this is the exact same team Sanguine had, save for Netruoid. So that makes things a little more interesting in that conversation. He's going up against essentially the guy that he replaced on this team in one way. But you also had to look at it. I mean, Hardcore just had a sequence where he damn near soloed, if not did solo, every other carry in the league. I mean, he has had a hell of a year, and now Zap's going to be taking his place. Do you think that has any weight to it at all, or is that? I mean, Zap's a veteran at this point. He's been playing longer than pretty much everyone in the league. Do you think it's just not going to affect him that badly?
No, I don't think that's going to weigh too heavily on Zapman's mind. He's got a pretty healthy ego himself. I'm sure he still considers himself the best to have ever done it, or at least one of them. So I'm sure he's not too concerned with his performance inside of the long lane. And, well, Yarkor is incredibly consistent. He has had a great year inside of the Hunter role, had an even better year out of the Soul lane. So,
true.
Look, flip a coin. He's going to do great heads or tails.
I was going to say, with a front line like the Leviathans, I don't think you're complaining about being on this team in any regards. I'm excited to see it. Of course, I mean, who better to ask about it than Zapman himself? Zap, it's kind of weird. I'm prepared to talk to you, and I have to wipe scarabs out of my mind. I mean, just a few days ago, you were here for that. And I got to ask, with this change come through, how's the team synergy been? We've seen you queuing with Wrong You, but the rest of the team, how's it all feeling?
Oh, it feels good, man. It just feels like plug and play. I've been playing SMITE, like Mifflin was saying, for a long time, and I understand SMITE, and these guys are great players, so it kind of just is intuitive. You know what I mean? And and for those of people that don't know, I'm actually half Ecuadorian. I grew up around, Spanish-speaking mother, Spanish cousins, all that stuff. I've been to Ecuador, so I know a lot of Spanish. I may not speak it fluently, but I actually understand most of the keywords and stuff like that, so that's not an issue.
Well, that just wiped the second question. I was actually really curious about that because it was that conversation I was having it where it's just, man, I wonder, because I think we even talked to the Leviathans saying they were comfortable in English. I guess you guys have been scrimming together the last few days, right? And so things have been feeling pretty solid all around, especially in comms, like the synergy is all there?
Yeah, I mean, they say Dale, I go in, they say Sale, I get the hell out of there, you know what I mean? So no, it's good, man, and, I've had a ton of respect for these guys for a long time, and, it's going to be an awesome experience. I'm really happy, looking forward.
Well, I know you're going up against the Kings here, which is already a tall order in and of itself, but with these roster changes coming through, usually that's like the excuse for like a week, maybe even 2, to have some bumps. Are you expecting to come out like trails blazing here, or do you think there's going to be a couple of kinks in the road just because the Kings are a tough team to take on?
The Kings are tough, but I don't expect us to play bad by any means. I think we have a really good shot at taking this set and the set tomorrow as well, so I'm pretty confident going in.
I'm excited to hear it, man. I think with that amount of confidence going into this, with a roster swap, I guess technically a role swap in there, but come on, we all know what hardcore can do. I'm excited to see what you guys have to offer. A newly revitalized Leviathans. Thanks, Zap, for your time. Good luck in your games, man.
Thank you.
Myth. I'm really actually pumped for these. It was one of those things I was actually expecting to hear. Well, if we don't win, we're just kind of still getting acquainted. The fact that they're feeling confident opens up a different conversation, I think, here for the Leviathans. Granted, the rest of the Leviathans, I think, always feel confident, but having it all come together as a team in just a week is insane.
Yeah, to put this into perspective, for about an entire year now, Zapman's been saying, all right, guys, we're working on it. We're going to get there. We're making strides. We might not win this week, but we're going to keep improving. He didn't say that with this Leviathans draft. He looked revitalized. He looked happy, exuberant, and not a single excuse was made. I am confident in my abilities is what I saw from that interview. And, well, if you're a Leviathans fan or just a Zapman fan, I think that should have put you at ease.
I mean, it's an interesting one because you're going up against a lot of players. So a lot of these players that you've seen have been opponents for Zapman in the past, right? Especially when you look at the Kings lineup. A majority of them, in fact, he's played up against. Netroid, though, was the big one last year. And, of course, this year they've played a few times up against the Kings. Last year, we've talked about how PK didn't necessarily have the year of their lives. And this year, Scarabs haven't necessarily. They took down the Kings in an important set earlier on, but haven't really been able to do much outside of that. Netroid has the matchup versus Zap 13 games to 8 that Zapman has, Mifflin. But Netroid was a beast. When talked about why he's no longer on the Leviathans roster, it's not because of play. Again, it's the out-of-game stuff that comes into the equation, and he's been meshing well with genetics. This feels like it's going to be a real challenge for the Leviathans.
I will say that Netroid this year has fit himself even more so a little bit into that role player status. He's facilitating. He isn't playing as aggressively as I was used to seeing him play on that Sanguine roster. Instead, he's looking for his opportunities to be sure, but instead also looking to rotate in the mid, trying to facilitate guys like Big Man Tings, making sure that even Captain Twig is able to get whatever he wants done inside of the match. So I am excited for this one to see how he decides to play up against Zapman because, as you've already talked about, it is almost like he's getting to play against the dude who replaced him, air quotes. That's not exactly how this one pans out, but stuff like that does put a little bit of a fire under you.
You replaced his replacement, you're replacing him, right? I think that's how it works. Yeah. Transitive property, math, numbers, words, things like that. I'm excited to watch this one. I think it's an interesting dynamic because both of these teams are in a position where you don't actually, there should be, I would argue, maybe no bans towards the carries here. Good luck making Netroid or Zap feel uncomfortable, especially in this current meta with the bow builds, the way things are going. And it comes, instead of these carries, even though they're so easy to highlight, to their supports. I think this is a big game for Wrong Yu, how he synergizes with Zap specifically, but their core 3v3, and then Genetics on the other side, that first few minutes in the duo lane could be very electric in terms of excitement.
Yeah, I think it's very likely we see a lot of bans tossed towards Genetics in particular. The Ymir is something that he's had a lot of success on, the Umoja as well, and a lot of teams have been trying to limit him in particular on those two picks, and, well, the Leviathans are a squad that are definitely doing their homework.
I mean, you want to talk about Umoja picks, though. Wrong You on the other side, I'm looking at it, I see Kings are first pick behind me, so that feels like a ban it or grab it in that case, so that's going to make, I think, a very important pickup for them. I'm actually really curious about this. Again, they've been queuing ranked, at least Zapman and Wrong Yu together a lot, and they've had their scrims. But we talked about it earlier. It's this frontline story, which is hardcore, now in solo lane going up against Variety. Maybe a little scarier for Variety than it is for hardcore. We talked to the Leviathans before this year when we asked them what's up with the swap, and they said, we trust him to play anywhere and anything. And I think this is just more proof of that.
Yeah, and he said himself, I'm the best Smite player, full stop. Doesn't matter what role I am good at Smite. And, well, he proved it. He immediately put up that shut up. So
he kind of did.
I'm not overly concerned about his ability to perform here today out of the soul lane, but it is worth noting that he is up against veteran talent inside of Harry Cumming. Variety has been a very consistent piece of this Camelot Kings roster, and, well, it's going to be a great test to see how quickly Yarkor is readjusting to his life in the solo.
This is one that, again, it's going to be fun, like you said, to see that because whether it was Julio or last year, you look at where hardcore was, they were the maybe strongest frontline duo that we had in the league. I mean, there were definitely games where it was ebb and flowed. They had their peaks, they had their valleys and all that, but we were just watching, we were doing commentary review yesterday, and there was a fight with 2 Cthulhus that Shinto walks out of, and my mind is just like, how does Shinto get out of there? It's because this Leviathans team, not only their communication, but their front line just works so well together. How do you take that apart? How do you pick it apart?
You got to try really hard. I mean, if I had that answer, I wouldn't be here. I'd be out there coaching these teams or even playing potentially. This Leviathans team is hard to deal with, and it's kind of been their MO since day one. They don't hide their cards. They don't keep it close to their chest. They say, this is how we play. We're going to play it, and I dare you to beat it. And so far, well, not many teams have been able to do that consistently. I think, if anything, targeting Panatom has been one place some teams have been able to find some success because he likes to go towards these gods that fall off pretty hard if they fall behind. If Panatom's on something like an Erlang Shen, and it's not exclusive to Panatom, that god is just, in general, a little bit poor from behind, but that is one way you can at least remove a facet of that front line.
And that actually brings up I think another really enticing conversation. Man, this is just a good matchup. Now that I'm thinking about like how easy this is to break down, first off. But it's not just Panatom, who, granted, sometimes we see him playing the setup player, right? Like you mentioned Erlang Shen, but he's going for taunts, he's going for pins, he's looking to set Shinto up for kills. Sometimes we've seen last year his Thor, his Susanoo as well, are those, I'm going to find these kills, I'm going to be a carry myself. He's going up against Twig, who mainly matches that setup style. Is that going to be a point of attrition? Like, is the jungle is it mainly just set up for mid laners at this point? Like, Tings and Shinto are going to have fun.
So here's the thing about how I'm willing to tell the truth and speak to the people, and Aggro would never admit this. This is some of the best mid lane has been able to perform in Smite full stop. I mean, every single year in and out, this might be the strongest mid lane has ever been, which is why we're seeing some of these junglers start to shift their style a little bit more so towards that facilitator. Sure, Panatom had that ability to kind of toss it up last year, but now he's leaned a little bit more so into it. He wants to make sure that Shinto is hitting the ground running, and that is just intelligent play on field. Play around where your strength is, and, well, in Smite right now, it's generally around the mid lane.
Well, you can tell Biggie, coach here for the Kings, as well as I guess the Kings themselves have been doing their homework. Look, we had said ban it or pick it for the emoji. Ban it immediately. That's the first thing that goes off the list. Guess what? I would argue ban it or pick it for the Raijin as well because of the way we've seen Shinto perform on that. They banned that one as well to get it out of his hands. That has been one of his top performing gods this year. The other side, Ymir, hey, that makes sense. We've seen that banned against Genetics countless times this year. That's not too big of a question. In fact, it is the top ban against them. Terra, however, it's something Genetics has been going to recently, but I did not expect to see that up there.
It makes sense to me. We called it out a little bit earlier. We knew that Genetics was likely going to be the one to get targeted out inside of this ban phase, and then Tiamat rounding out that third one for the Leviathans is pretty strong. But that does leave a lot of priority picks on the table, and exactly this one. I see it on your face.
How did I forget about Morgan? We've been sitting here for 22 minutes. I mentioned it at the beginning of Waiting Room, and I forgot about her.
Well, it's because there was like 80 roster changes that we had to go over, and some fun drama. But Morgan Le Fay is a great god. She is consistent. She does great artillery damage. She's got good range, self-peel. I would describe her knock-up as unreactable. If you are in range, you got to predict it. You have to pre-beads that knockup because the active frames come out so quickly. I think that this god is going to have a firm home here in the SPL, but there are limitations to her. She isn't incredibly mobile. Yep. She is very easy to dive. Gods like Gilgamesh and Fafnir can make it very hard to perform for the Le Fay, but we know that the Kings have a great front line as well, which means that they should be able to create some space for this guy, and given a little bit of space, a ton of damage will follow. I was
going to say, Variety. This is Variety and Genetics show to showcase how well they can protect this presumably mid laner. I mean that's kind of where the conversation has been around her. I don't think anybody has been insinuating anything different. I remember actually asking specifically Venenu about this pick when we were doing, what was that, Waiting Room last week? And this was the conversation of, man, is she going to get played? Didn't even have to wait. One game in, we have her. You know what? Not only bringing in the new hotness, bringing in an old 2012 lane with us as well. Artemis Sobek locked in for the Kings. This Artemis has been on the rise.
Yeah, Artemis is just such a great pick right now. Great late-game hyper carry, has a ton of damage, synergizes incredibly well with that full bow build, especially with Silver Branch and having the Vengeful Assault to even further boost your own attack speed and power in that same note. But I'm not willing to say just yet that this Sobek is going into support. We have recently seen a resurgence of Guardians out of the solo lane with Vampiric Shroud shoring up some of that sustain, and, well, Sobek kind of benefits from that as well. So the Kings bring some ambiguity with their top three.
Not only that, but that is a big pick for variety in the past. That Sobek solo has been a friend to him. Someone that I am surprised to see, not necessarily on the screen, but as far down as it was. First off, I will highlight Baba Yaga got locked in there, presumably for Shinto here, someone else that has been a big pick these last couple of weeks. But this Fenrir drops to the 9th ban overall. Someone, I mean, in some of these sets, your dragons, your bolts, like he is a first pick, he's a must-have. And in this one, they fall down so far. Even against the Kings, it's a good pick for Twig. It feels really surprising to see him fall down so far.
Yeah, I think that Twig has a diverse enough god pool that he doesn't really necessarily need that one. I mean, we could see the Naja come through, or even the Kings could line up that OG combo of Naja plus Ra or something along those lines. But I gotta say it, man, just looking at this top 3 from the Leviathans, I know it's easy to get swept up in the Kings draft because Morgan Le Fay is there and it's interesting and fun, but this Leviathans draft already is the epitome of Season 8 Smite. I mean, Gilgamesh plus Fafnir have been dominating the meta. Baba Yaga with her new build pass allowed with no boots means she can go immediately into stacking items, which is a ton of health from Warlock Staff as well as additional survivability. From buffs towards her ultimate, a larger health shield as well. This is a very high damage composition that is not necessarily very high execution either. The Leviathans have given themselves a wide breadth of a win condition.
My favorite thing, though, if you ever needed anything to state more that this is not hardcore playing in the carry role and it's Zapman, it's a Hachiman lockout. That is not something that we have seen out of him so far, but that is something that Steve loves to go to. So not too surprising to see him locked in. But I have a question for you, especially now that we can see the full Kings roster. Geb, Raven locked in alongside it. The Geb is the one I hone in on a little bit more. Not only did you call the Sobek, again, presumably solo. Geb's solo has been done, but not in a
by
few
like
seasons.
one guy. Mando Warrior, if you're out there,
whoa.
if it goes solo, it's you. You did it.
Aggro, I'm going to look to you on this one. I'm pretty sure Divios ran Geb solo a couple times, and yeah, okay. I just wanted to make
Divios,
sure.
you too.
So some really long knowledge on you there, but that CC immunity, specifically the shield, should be helpful for Morgan Le Fay.
It should be. The additional survivability, as we already highlighted, that is one of her weaknesses out of the mid lane, and as a god, she's generally not great at escaping. It's a little bit of additional movement speed inside of her kit, but outside of that is very easy to shut down. Well, who's a great counterpuncher? Who's going to be able to create that space? I can't think of many things that are better than Cataclysm, Stone Shield, even the knock-up from Geb as well. This is a great king protection comp that the Kings have selected for themselves, unintentional there, but I am concerned because Morgan Le Fay is not the only one that is going to need a ton of peel. This Artemis is also incredibly easy to shut down, so the Leviathans, again, have given themselves a good dive composition. There are 2 guys that are very susceptible to dive on the side of the Kings, which means that this Geb is going to have to play incredibly well. It's going to leave a lot of the door open for Sobek to act as the initiator, but I don't think Geb's really going to be allowed to blink in and use that Cataclysm aggressively too often unless they get a lead.
Now the matchup, though, Sobek, presumably Variety used to love playing that in solo lane, so it makes sense for that to be the combo. But Cucullin for hardcore feels like he's just trying to step back. Like that's a very comfortable pick from last year that's going to be very easy to slide into. But does it kind of match with the rest of this draft, specifically the Hachiman? Like you had highlighted the top 3 earlier, but these bottom 2 for the Leviathans definitely feel like they're playing to the player strengths as opposed to maybe the team strengths.
I mean, Cucullin comes through with Gilgamesh and Fafnir. That's dive potential. You want to shut down Morgan Le Fay and Artemis? Well, you've got it right there. Hachiman is allowed to act almost as a solo agent. Harken back to the conversations we used to have in Season 7. It was, who are the safest hunters? Who are they getting locked in every game? Jingwei, Hachiman. It's just that hop on Epona, CC immunity, ride faster away than anyone could catch you. I like this draft, man. It's so hard to argue against. Even Baba Yaga, who is a little bit more susceptible once she uses that leap, has a ton of survivability. Warlock Staff, the health shield, the knockback, everything here is going to make it very hard for the Kings to operate. I'm heavily leaning towards this Leviathans draft, and it's not something I say too often. This might be like an 8-2 favored Leviathans.
Wow, I actually didn't expect that, if I'm being honest with you. I'm giddy with excitement for this one just because, first off, you've got roster swaps. You've got a really good matchup, I think, in every single role here. You've got Morgan Le Fay, a new god that comes through. There's so much to be excited for, and yet you're still at 8-2. Like, I mean, good like dive on that comp, but Sobek, Geb, I guess maybe to an extent Raven, like, is that not enough to peel?
Raven should not be acting as peel. His job is to
His root
get
should
into
not
that
be used
Baba Yaga.
defensively.
Yeah, we need to be in there and shutting down this damage outpouring from the Leviathans. I'm sold on Morgan Le Fay as a god. I'm not
Okay.
going to say that she's not incredibly strong. I think she is. She is going to be a mainstay here in the SPL, but I think that there are some glaring weaknesses in this draft that the Kings have that have been further put to light by this Leviathans lineup. I'm very concerned with their ability to make a comeback. If they fall behind, the Kings that is, at any point, I don't think their comeback mechanics are really there.
I'm curious about your thoughts. You just said Morgan Le Fay is going to be around, sticking around. Whether or not she's first pick worthy was what I was going to ask you, but it seems like we're ready to get into the game. The Kings are going to have to prove it themselves. Let's go down to Dave and Aggro to take us through this one.
Gore, it's one of the most anticipated weekends of the SPL that I can remember here in recent memory. The Camelot Kings up against the Leviathans. It's Dolson, Aggro, and Doug bringing you game number 1, game number 2, and maybe game number 3. In anticipation, not only because Morgan Le Fay available and picked, we're going to get to that one here in a minute, Aggro, but because of all these roster changes, chaos has been happening in the SPL. Twitter's been a lot of fun to follow along with. And in both of our sets today, we're going to get to see some of those roster changes and actions. First and foremost, Yarkor back to the solo lane. Zapman, still in Hunter, but over here on this new team.
Listen, man, if you like good Smite, you like watching Yarkor in solo. It's pretty easy in my mind because he was one of the best solo laners in the league last year. I don't think it's going to take him long to return to form. Now, is he going to be at his peak in this game? Maybe not. Maybe not this week. Maybe not next week. But overall, I think that Yarkor is going to return by the end of this phase. He'll be one of the best solo laners in the league yet again. And seeing how Zapman fits in to this team dynamic, how well he and Rongyu work together over here in this duo lane, but how well he works with Shinto in team fights, and if he can create space for him like he created space for Paul, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, it's a pick that Zapman's comfortable with in this Hachiman, so if the 1-2 punch of Hachiman plus Fafnir can provide some presence over there for the Leviathans, certainly be a good start to this new look at this roster. But now it's time, I think, to shift our focus on here towards the mid lane. Not a roster swap, but a god pool increase for the mid laners here in the SPL. Morgan Le Fay officially available, and the first game she's available, she's going to get to find some presence here in the mid lane as Panatom and Shinto actually chasing down Captain Twig. And this one's a pretty easy chase down, but the damage is there from Shinto over the wall, and first blood to the Baba Yaga.
Needed every inch of that wild magic, but she got it. That's first blood there, and just not quite
geometry.
enough fight damage there from the Morgan Le Fay, and that's what she isn't super great at this point. Look, Gore's asking if she's first pick worthy on the desk. To be honest, I'm not really sure, because I think that she does a lot of things very well. She puts out a ton of damage. She's got good control. That Wildfire, the 3 that procs when you use a movement ability, it does sneaky damage to you. But she has no mobility, and it's really just that movement speed whenever she uses the 3. Her self-peel tools are fantastic, but someone like Gilgamesh, can you really peel him off of you well enough? I'm not really sure. That's going to be interesting to see how she develops, because I do think she does a lot of things very well. I think her clear speed is good enough. I think her fight potential on mid camps after level 2 is probably good enough. Even then, they got the mid camps, just didn't win the fight after the fact. I think that she is good enough to see play. I'm just not sure if she's really, really good, which is very possible, or only pickable against certain compositions that don't dive you super well, which I would not say the Leviathans draft fits. So they really came prepared in order to dive this Morgan Le Fay.
I think it's one of those things, we had this period of figuring things out when the no boots update came in, how our meta's going to shift, picks going to shift, things like that. Same kind of idea when new gods joined the pick pool here at the SPL. We know what they do in our games, and then when we sit down and play them on our end, but we don't know how they are at the SPL level.
It's a great point, because I think that Morgan Le Fay, in my experience, has been fantastic in ranked and in high-level games that I've watched and that kind of stuff. She's looked fantastic in those where the dive is not coordinated, where she's able to get her damage off a little bit more consistently, use that dragon flight in order to peel away the one diver, and then get some help from the team in order to kill them without another secondary diver coming in really effectively, or that the dive just doesn't work because it wasn't a good fight selection. Those things are more likely to happen in ranked, where she's looked fantastic. I just don't know if that's going to translate to the SPL level quite yet.
On the flip side, I think Baba Yaga's kind of had the opposite conversation around it, where for a little while we didn't know these specific players that'd be looking good on this Baba Yaga pick, and now Shinto has really thrown his name into that category, and admittedly, that one caught me by surprise. I talked about it on the SPL rundown last week with APAM and that whole crew, And the conversation was, wow, this Leviathans team really loves this Baba Yaga. Is it because Shinto's good on it? Is it because Baba Yaga's good? You know, I thought it might have been a little bit of both, and now Shinto with First Blood, not a knockdown, drag-out performance yet, but Shinto has shown that this type of pick can fit this Leviathans team composition, and maybe in this specific game, but play style in general pretty well.
Man, I've been saying for a while now, it's only a matter of time until Baba starts to be one of those gods that people really fear at the high level and in stuff like ranked, because I think she's really, really good. Her early game is not fantastic. She does not defend her buffs particularly well, and that's always been her weakness. But now that you can really leverage that stacking passive much better than you used to without having to buy boots, now it's not a question of, well, do I go Book of Thoth? Do I go Warlocks? Do I do them before boots? Do I do them after boots? Now you just get to buy them outright, and he's already 30 stacks deep 5 minutes into the game. I mean, Dave, this was before your time, but I remember a time when you were being praised if you were stacking your Warlocks pre-11 minutes.
Captain Twig does steal away the Greater Scorpion here, but there was some reverse dive on the back end. Captain Twig has to ult away, but he'll keep himself safe. I thought you were going to say I was getting praised for something, but
God, no.
It was the universal you. Like,
yes.
you as a player are
yeah,
getting
Dave,
praised.
if you were slamming some Agni Season 1 and, and you got your Warlock staff online at 11 minutes, the casters would be like, oh, they're at a good... This mid laner's in a really good spot right here because they're already stacking their Warlock staff by the 11-minute mark.
Yeah, it's just what we expect now, right?
Yeah, 50 stacks less than 6 minutes in. And that just gives you so much effective HP against a god that isn't as easy to dive as someone like a Morgan Le Fay, for example.
Right.
But you got the leap there for Shinto, of course, with the damage mitigation on top. And then the ultimate that gives you a big shield, knocks you back, CC immunity, the whole shebang. And it's putting out a ton of damage that you can't really walk through. I'm excited to see what these two mid laners are going to output, because these are two that I'm excited to see moving forward. I think that they might be two of the premier mages right now in the meta.
We'll follow along with both builds then in the mid lane as well. Shinto and other Baba Yagas tend to like Warlocks into Charon's coin. Big man Ting starting off the Chronos pendant on the back end of Vampiric Shroud, so you need a little cooldown on the Morgan Le Fay to maximize some of that damage early on here. Captain Twig made his way into the fray early on, probably earlier than he desired. Fell for First Blood. Panatom on this Gilgamesh was right there to provide the assist on that one. But this is when you want to see Captain Twig start to dial up some of that pressure. Did steal away the Greater Scorpion just a moment ago, and unfortunately Genetic's not able to do the same. But this is where this Robin needs to start making an impact.
Yeah, this is kind of where the Kings have leaned on Twig's experience in the jungle, because they're a team that really likes to go late. They're picking things like Terra. They're picking Geb in this game instead, because I believe the Terra was banned away. Very similar play style to what they're used to. They're trying to scale into the late game. Sobek solo, late game Guardian for Genetics. Great carry potential out of the mid and ADC. So they're putting Twig on these picks like Robin as insurance, as, all right, if things start to get a little spicy before we're ready, we've got someone who's equipped, who's ready to fight, and that's really been the story. And as a result, Twig as of late has not looked like he's setting the world on fire in the jungle. He has not looked like he's hard carrying games, but what he's doing for this team is really buying them the time they need in order for their composition to win them games. And so in a lot of ways, I would really credit Twig for winning the Kings a lot of games, because he is their lone stopgap a lot of the time in the early to mid game to preventing teams from steamrolling them. And it's little things like being aggressive around the Greater Scorpion on the right-hand side in order to try and set it up.
Uh-oh, Netrioid 2v1 here. Will drop down the ultimate, but won't save his life, and Zapman collapses on in, and down goes Netrioid. So some pressure, the 1-2 punch, and Zapman on the board for the first time as a member of the Leviathans.
Love it. And him and Rongyu on perfect sync. I mean, just a bit of disrespect there from Netrioid. Did not respect that Zap probably did not solo that Draugr by himself. Ends up stepping up in the lane and thinking that he's going to be able to just use the board to get away. But this Hachiman dive is really good. It's not something we talk about often with this pick. Normally it's Hachiman is so safe, it's hard to kill him, yada yada. But just like Jingwei, these gods that are safe, they're safe because of their mobility out, or in this case, mobility in. You can close the gap for free on someone like Artemis. It's going to cost him his beads every time, and Zap did use it aggressively, but Netrioid had to use his because of the good hammer stun from Rongyu, and a Sunder on top of that mounted archery damage. No shot Netrioid's walking out of that one.
So now Netrioid, a bit of a hill to climb, 2 levels in the hole over there on the duo lane, and luckily for Genetics, he's been able to keep level equity with Rongyu. But now Zapman has some pressure, on a pick that can find a little bit of ranged poke there and feels relatively good in that lane once the supports start to rotate out. We followed along with some of the builds. It is Charon's Coin for Shinto, second item, no real surprise there. Over in the jungle, though, somewhat interesting here. Mannequins is not jumped out at me as always surprising on certain picks. You know, Osiris has seen it a lot, or Shen has seen it a lot. How does it synergize here with this Gilgamesh?
Gilgamesh is pretty auto-attack based. I mean, that's where a lot of his damage is going to be coming from, so it feels good when you're fighting. I have not tried it myself whenever it comes to the clear speed and how it affects you there, but I imagine it's probably fine. It's not too dissimilar to Eye of the Jungle. And a lot of times you're just trying to build this mostly hybrid, you know, one offensive item, as it seems like he's going with the Brawler's Beat Stick, which I love in the Morgan Le Fay, by the way, because a lot of her survivability comes from her ultimate and the amount of crazy lifesteal that she gets during it. But also that now you're going to start going a little bit more defensive. Fighter's Mask for more cheap power. Now it's going to probably be an Anchile there for him in order to try and make this dive a little bit better. Runic Shield would also be great up against the Sobek and Geb. Make sure that they aren't doing nearly as much damage, particularly that Sobek. Taking away that base power makes a big difference.
Mantings gets disarmed here, but there's a sudden engage over onto Genetics, who will try to get away here, but the re-dive is just too good, and Shinto gifted another kill, and now this Baba Yaga 2-0 here, and the Leviathans find themselves about 1,000 gold ahead, so certainly not backbreaking, but they're on the right track.
And that's why I think this Leviathans draft is so interesting, because they know the Kings are trying to scale, but they've picked a scaling mid laner as well.
There's extra dive now onto Big Man Tings, the drop kick against the wall, and Shinto on a killing spree. This 1-2, I wouldn't say punch, but it's been kick with Panatom. It's just been so effective. And that shows you where you can smooth over some of those early game woes maybe on this Baba Yaga. You show a little jungle pressure, and she still got the damage.
She still has the damage, no doubt about it. And Shinto hasn't had to use beads or ult 11 minutes into this game, and he's 3-0 and top of the net worth charts. Really, to me, it's a story of one player who's really locked in right now, and that's Rongyu. That was a max range, over-the-wall stun on the Dragon form. And Big Man Tings, who had used beads despite receiving a Geb shield in that last fight where Genetics got picked, wasted his beads on Rongyu's hammer, even though Genetics' shield was coming in, and then because he didn't have those beads, ends up dying and getting punished for it. So definitely a bit of a step down now for Big Man, because Genetics ends up dying because he doesn't have shield for himself, and then ends up dying anyways in the mid lane. Not a great start for this Morgan Le Fay.
Well, we've seen plenty of variety in where the kills fall on the Camelot Kings, except
but variety
for
doesn't have them.
Variety,
right,
man, you read that one. You read that one like a book.
I was already there.
Twig, Big Man Tings, Genetics, and Netrioid all have fallen at least once here. Genetics, you get the mindset here, Aggro, that there's enough physical damage dive threat, I guess, in this Leviathans draft that Thebes feels great. Most supports tend to go that item first overall. But Sovereignty, I feel like we've seen, I mean, it's certainly not been an overwhelming item pick, but a little bit more Sovereignty here as of late, and Genetics another indication.
I mean, look, the Kings know that the Leviathan's game plan has got to be, we've got to kill this Artemis, we've got to kill this Morgan Le Fay, because they're going to do too much damage if we don't. And who's going to be doing the vast majority of that diving? Cucullin and Gilgamesh. And if you're going to be able to build double aura against them in the sense of Thebes plus Sovereignty, then it's going to be that much easier for your carries to get their damage off and end up ultimately surviving those dives. And that's the whole game plan for the King's composition. Their composition is not difficult to understand. It is let Big Man and Netrioid free cast late game. If we get there at an even state, we should win, because our late game should just be a little bit better. But if everyone's going to be itemizing against Yarkor and Panatom, and Zapman, of course, I'm worried about who's going to be able to handle this Baba Yaga, who's 3-0.
Yep.
It looks like Shinto, I wonder if he's going for Book of Thoth as a third stacking item in a row. You've already got your pen coming from the Charon's coin.
Yeah.
It very easily could be Soul Reaver, which is
right.
fantastic on Baba. You're signing up for that every time. But at some point, I'm probably thinking about my build, you know.
That's what I'm saying. Line up the stacking items. I want to see them all.
Right. Not only line them up, but now you're not going to get punished because you're so far ahead that I'm going to deal 1 million damage anyways. I don't have to worry about, you know, I'm going to not have as much effective damage right away.
Right.
It's just, what am I getting after that? You know, is he going to be able to fit Book of Thoth, then Soul Reaver, then Rod would be my guess for how he finishes the build. That's awfully expensive for this build, but Baba's the one character who can make a build like that work because it's going to take her a lot less time stacking in comparison to others.
For what it's worth, me wanting to see all of the stacking items lined up is a lot less analytical and more like I love seeing all the bows built in order.
Yes.
So like all the stacking items built in order, I think would be fun to follow.
For a
along
while, I think it was the season before you got here. The mage build was just like Book of Thoth, Soul Reaver, Polynomicon, Book of the Dead. It was
That's too much reading.
Preseason. It was the library build, and I loved it because you just got all these books.
Yeah, you're getting
Or
all your reading done
blue,
in game.
All the blue build, like Spear of the Magus and Desolation are both blue, and you're always building those every game. Those builds, I agree. Aesthetically, it's fun to watch.
It is Soul Reaver for Shinto, so no more stacking items for me, at least for the time being.
Well, he will probably get a somewhat stacking item. He'll probably get a Soul Gem, which does stack, but does not receive stacks from Baba Yaga's house, which is worth noting. Baba Yaga's house will only give you permanent stacks on items, not the temporary ones. So you're not getting free Soul Gem procs without hitting your abilities.
This game has slowed down just a little bit here, Captain Twig. We mentioned the insurance policy maybe if things really start to go haywire. Luckily for the Kings, it hasn't gotten wildly out of control, but the Leviathans still find themselves a couple thousand gold ahead of things here. 4-0 in the kills department are the Leviathans. Panatama and Rongyu, sort of that engaged core, have really felt key here for the Atlantis Leviathans. Luckily for Netrioid, things have slowed down a bit over here in the duo lane. Still a 2-level lead, though, for Zapman, and a bit of a divergence. We talked about the full-on bow build, and really, I think, Artemis players were a lot of the ones who were doing that.
Yep.
Different look, though. Ichabel right into the chin size. Still looks like a bow on the back end, but slapping that chin size there in the middle. Maybe a bit of a detraction from the standard.
Just really thinking about who's going to be in front of him. Netrioid is building to kill the tanks, which is what you would expect him to have to do in this game. And he's going to need to finish off some pen. That should be an Atalantis for him, which will help in that regard. But until that's done, I don't really think that he puts that much threat onto this Gilgamesh or Cullen, so I'm not surprised to see him play aggressive.
Uh-oh, immobile is the Morgan Le Fay, and you're going to have to use both of your actives to stay alive. Genetics tosses a shield out towards BMT as well. That'll keep the Morgan Le Fay in the fight. Pentatom with the execute ultimate ends up getting the kill onto the Kings mid laner. Now the dive comes in, and it's Pentatom with the double. Shinto's got his fourth. And the Atlantis Leviathans roll over the Camelot Kings in a pretty lopsided fight.
Variety TP's in and is like, where is everyone? Am I late to the party? And the answer is, yeah, you're late to the party. Now he's going to have to just try and delay on this Gold Fury, but it's going to cost him his ultimate at the very least. I love the play here from the Leviathans because this is really taking what the Kings have been doing as of late and adjusting their game plan accordingly. The Leviathans are not letting the Kings play this slow pace. They're forcing these engagements, and they're not all the time. They're not just turning their brains off and running it down on purples and reds and that kind of stuff, but they've really chosen their power spikes well. It's right after Shinto gets this Soul Reaver. It's right after Zapman gets this Odysseus bow. And how about the synergy on the dive here from the Leviathans that Rongyu and Shinto are together once again. Big man just a little bit too far away from Genetics, ends up taking too much damage right off the rip. And then Zapman's able to come in, do that last little bit of damage to put her to 1 HP. And then Panatom comes in and is able to finish her off with just the initial deploy damage of the Winds of Shamash. Really, really good coordinated dive, and you can tell what the focus is for the Leviathan. So now, if you're on the Kings, if I'm in the King's shoes, if I'm in Big Man Ting's shoes in particular, I'm saying, look, keep trying to shield me, all that kind of stuff. Let's just try and peel for me. But Netrioid, you have to be really far from me, and you have to be a completely different area of the team fight because the Cardinal Sin there for the Kings, and it's tough because of the positioning of that fight.
Yep.
But Netrioid can't use all this to get to Big Man and then find themselves on Netrioid's doorstep. That's the worst case scenario.
Yarkor's found a double knock up here on the right side of the map. It's the driving strike. It's not a Hercules in this game, but it's a dash forward from Yarkor there as Variety lurks in the waters here. Twig down beneath the tier 1 tower. Is a 3 versus 3 at the time, but look at the rotations in. Shinto the first to join into the party. Genetics got a 3-man Cataclysm on the backside. This is a fight the Camelot Kings have found some good setup. Tusky flies on in, roots a couple members of the Leviathans in place, but now the transformation from Rongyu could sow some discord.
And Twig did not get the memo. He was still going forward as the rest of the Kings on heavy retreat, but Genetics not allowed to let go. Wrongy with another great stun.
Plenty of damage on the rest of the Leviathans that are there, and Shinto's got a double 6-0-2 on the Baba Yaga. 18 minutes in, 9-0 are the Leviathans, 6 of them on their mid laner. Interesting opportunity here for the Leviathans to make a call, and FG is that call.
Yeah, I mean, big man's got ult and relics, but he's got no one to support him, so this FG likely to go down. It feels like all is right in the world again, doesn't it? I mean,
we were concerned about this team synergizing. I don't know if anyone really was. Maybe we weren't concerned about this team synergizing.
It's just like Shinto has all the kills because Yarkor. It gets a great initiation on Kakulin. Rongyu is locked in with these stuns. He's looked so good in this game, man. 0-0-7 for him. Can't overstate how important he's been for this Leviathans team. But man, Zapman must be having them all right now. Like, is this how it's gonna be?
Yeah, everyone else is slamming.
Like, Shinto is just killing everyone, and my front line is doing everything for me. He is coasting, it feels like, in this game. Not to say he's not contributing, of course he is, but definitely a whole team effort right now from the Leviathans, who are looking really, really good. And the Kings just look a little bit sleepy in this game, a little bit caught off guard, because they've been really playing the style of we're gonna go at 23 minutes. Well, our composition's really gonna start making it work. And teams have been letting them get away with that. Not in this one. The Leviathans have been keeping the pace high.
Now it's a Tier 1 siege and a Tier 2 siege from the Atlantis Leviathans. Variety backs away. Let me rehash this one really quick.
Sure.
Plenty of variety in the deaths department here for the Camelot Except for that's all the payoff I needed. That's all the payoff I needed. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All the payoff I needed. Look, variety, you know, he's been there on the Sobek, but this is such a difficult game, you have to imagine. On a pick like this, you can find some setup like this, but with the way everything else is going, you know, no real surprise. We've reached that mid-late game type point. It's going to be very hard to kill variety.
Yes.
But also difficult for some of that setup to end up sticking here on the Leviathans with the way things are going.
Yeah, they might be difficult to kill variety, but like, do they need to?
Right.
They're killing everyone else right now.
But he can lurk in the waters.
He can lurk in the waters. But that's the thing about Sobek. Sobek is only as threatening as the team he's plucking you into. That's really the only threat that he's going to do. He's not really the scariest Croc on his own. And right now, you're going to get plucked into not that much damage on the other side. It's a Silver Branch bow there for Netrioid, and I don't think he's going to be hitting that cap at this point. Maybe with his steroid, he'll get some power from it. But overall, not super threatening for a level 20 Yarkor with an upgraded Sundering Axe. I mean, he's not super threatened by that.
No, Yarkor is feeling just fine at the moment. Frenzy and Sunder for Rongyu over the other side, excuse me.
You're excused.
So we wondered, we dipped our toes into the conversation of double aura items. Both supports have gone for triple aura items. Gauntlet of Thebes, Heart Ward, and Sovereignty for both Genetics and Rongyu. And then the Relic Dagger smack dab in the middle there for Rongyu. And I think your earlier point still stands on how these teams want to play around things like that, and so I won't spend too much more time on that as we'll look towards this left side Phoenix siege here. The Camelot Kings regroup, got themselves all their beads online, so at least that feels pretty good here. But the Leviathans still got another 50 seconds left on this FG buff to make this siege.
Good poke coming from Big Man Tings, but this is where Shinto's extra HP from that Warlock staff comes into play, and this is where Shinto is on a god that does things well at this point in the game.
Genetics just takes a little bit of poke here on the left side of the engagement. Mid lane sees a 1v1. Captain Twig is over there as well as Yarkor. This is tense moments. The Camelot Kings, they definitely have a timer on where this FG buff is. You know, another 30 seconds. You got to feel like if they can hold out, keep all these Phoenixes online, you're never going to be happy with a game state when you're 12,000 gold behind 22 minutes in. But this looks like a call from the Leviathans. We don't have much time. Let's see if somebody overextends from the Kings, and let's just reset for the next FG.
I don't hate the call there from the Leviathans. Poke our head in, see what we can do. Maybe we pick someone who's walking alone through the jungle.
Maybe
or
a
Captain
Robin
Twig
or
sneaks through.
an Artemis.
Man, it's going to be Netrioid.
Yeah, it's a hammer onto Netrioid, and here's Yarkor on the leap on through. Tusky gets sent on out, but look at the range damage, and look at the leap on the Artemis. The drive on out from Yarkor, and then the roar to put him in the dirt. And the Leviathans have baited the trap well, and it's Netrioid who springs it.
But again, it's Rongyu on a perfect long-range stun onto this Morgan Le Fay, who's got to go up into the ultimate, and it just does not matter. 11-0 in the kill department right now.
And there are no carries for the next 40 seconds at least. In the Atlantis Leviathans, they can smell blood. The left side Phoenix still stands, but Captain Twig has to receive the shield, and he'll back away from the rest of this fight. Let's make sure to clean up the dust here on the back end. The Leviathans get the Phoenix down, and that's the indicator I was looking for. Let's extend no further. Despite there being no carries, we'll take the Phoenix and we'll leave.
Still not enough damage in order to take out the Titan and 3 members of the Kings, and Leviathans don't really need to at this point. They're up 11-0 and can just waltz on over to this Fire Giant and probably take that for themselves. Maybe the Kings will throw their hat in the ring to try and have a last-ditch effort around that FG, but you see the dive just working too well for the Leviathans. And can you tell Yarkor hasn't played solo in months? Because I couldn't.
No.
He perfectly timed his ultimate to immune the Tusky and the Cataclysm. Then he perfectly timed his Rage Form ultimate in order to not get knocked away by Genetics on the rollout and in order to kill Netrioid. I mean, Netrioid's like, what am I supposed to do against Cucullin? Nothing at this point because he's just too far ahead and you can't actually turn and burn onto him. This Leviathan's dive, that was his whole composition. We said it from the desk on. It's dive versus protection. Which one's going to win out? I think the dive has been the one.
You know what? This is kind of a wild reference, but I'm going to go there anyway.
Okay.
Ricky Bobby.
Okay.
I'm getting like John Gerard vibes from Yarkor, where like nobody could beat him, you know, in the ADC role. And he's like, all right, you know, nobody can beat me here, so I got to go back on over to the solo lane. Really weak reference. I thought I had more behind that.
Yeah,
but
I was buckled in and ready to go.
No, because the problem is
it wasn't horrible.
Well, he left from what, like France to go to the U.S. to beat everyone there. So he left from the solo lane because he was the problem is that he would have to be the best in the solo lane for this reference to make sense.
I mean, he was one of the best. For
there you go. All right, so we're stabilizing this reference here a little bit, and then went to the hunter role
where he was one of the best.
And now he's like, all right, I'm just gonna head on back over to the solo lane. It stands. That one's a 10 out of 10, and nobody will tell me otherwise. Thank you very much. Leviathans get the FG.
You're welcome.
Look, this one spiraled, hasn't it? It's 11-0. I did not expect the Camelot Kings to get blanked, right? I mean, this was supposed to be a pretty competitive matchup here, but the Leviathans have just looked like absolutely different animals here in game number 1. Right side Phoenix stands for the time being. I'm not sure the Kings can say much about it. Panatom will confirm that thought. It's a jump on a big man. Tings Morgan LeVay starts things off here in Season 8, 0-4. Down goes Netrioid to also return to 0-4. Genetics dies to 0-3, and it looks like Variety, unless he dies here, will be the only one undying on the Camelot Kings. Leviathans will take game 1.
Variety will end up taking the death, and Zapman caps his Leviathan's debut with a triple kill, 5-0-7 for him, and a 16-0 performance from this team that, remember, I said they got better during the SPL rundown, and rundown is APAM's show, right? I don't even know what our show's
waiting
called
room.
anymore. Waiting room, thank you, that's what it's called. I said I think the Leviathans got better, and they were already near the top of the standings. A scary thought for the rest of the SPL, because I really do think this Leviathans team, as they continue to get better, and they will from this position, are going to be one of the best teams in the league. The thing to note for this, though, is the Kings have been doing the same strategy for weeks, and this is really the first time they've gotten punished for it.
Yep.
I'm assuming they've got something else in the bank. I want to see what else they've developed and what they've got ready for when teams did inevitably adjust, which we've clearly seen has happened.
Yeah, this set far from over. This is a top 3 matchup, remember, 2 and 3 respectively for Leviathans and Kings. That's only game number 1. We're going to take a break. Game number 2 right after this.
Right, shop.smiteproleague.com for pretty much all of your SPL-related merch needs. Anything you want, whether it is league-specific, team-specific, you're going to be able to find it there. This shirt, unfortunately, not available anymore. You missed out on this one, but don't worry. Insight has you covered. They've got tons of great Smite Pro League merch, all available. Again, shop.smiteproleague.com is where you're going to be able to find that. I love, I have 2 more shirts, not like this one, but we have that's not true. I've got the hoodie, the SBL hoodie. I don't actually have it anymore.
Weird flex.
Because
this is all I have.
Hold on. My wife took that one from me, so I don't technically have it anymore. Oh, yeah, I'm married. That's my flex now. That is kind of a flex. I love my wife. Either way, you get that. I also have a really comfy shirt. She stole that one to sleep in. She says it's a comfy pajama top. So this is what I got left, dude. This is the one I was left with. Club. I have to go to shop.smiteproleague to get my own. Mifflin, you've got your own nice little shirt going on for you, and that is my weird segue of I don't know what to say about that other than I did not expect that game to go that way. Zap, you had sounded confident in that you were like, okay, this is 8-2 in favor of the Leviathans. Not a single kill for the Kings. They couldn't put anything on the board.
Yeah, I thought 8-2. I was going a little bit conservative in my estimations because, look, 8-2. It's just the drafts, but it should have been even further. And we saw where the issues started, and they started exactly right here with that phenomenal shot from Shinta over the wall, and everything started to get worse and worse with time. This was a draft from the Camelot Kings that was rooted in protect the king. Protect your... God, I hate that I'm saying that about the Camelot Kings, but that is exactly what they were trying to do. They wanted Morgan Le Fay and Artemis to be able to succeed, so they draft relatively good peel around her. Sobek has great peel with Tail Whip, as well as the Pluck as a counter-initiate tool. Even Lurking in the Waters can act as a slow. Cataclysm is phenomenal. Stone Shield to stop that single target damage. But all of that was not enough because the win conditions for this Camelot Kings draft were so narrow. Where were they supposed to push their lead? Where were they supposed to start their own aggression? They didn't have the tools to do it with the composition that they had, so instead, it was up to the Leviathans to set the pace. They got to choose where the fight started, what we're fighting over, why we're fighting, when we're fighting. Literally every decision that was made in that game was made by the Leviathans, and that's a byproduct of this Kings draft, and that's a type of draft that can work, but their late game pieces in their own right were not strong enough to create that timer. When we talk about Protect the King compositions back in the day, it's Kronos, Kali, these guys that are saying, all right, if we make it to 25 minutes, we just win. Well, this Kings draft didn't quite have that.
Yeah, Morgan Le Fay, the one that they were maybe trying to protect the most there. Less damage on the board than Wrong You was able to put up. So showcasing, I think, even more, not necessarily what the Kings lacked, but more the dominance the Leviathans were able to go forward with. I even saw a few people on Twitter saying, man, maybe we don't let Wrong You get Fafnir anymore, but all of a sudden you're stopping him from getting Yamoja. You can't let him have Fafnir. You can only control one guy so much in terms of his roles. Ymir was banned out that one as well. Terra is there's 4 technical Guardian bans throughout the first 6 that came through from both teams there. We'll have to see how it goes. Zapman with a smile on his face has to be feeling good. Look, you make a roster swap,
5 seeds.
Everyone's going to put a magnifying glass onto you, and then that's the performance you have against the team you're tied with in the standings? Mifflin, you're more than ecstatic here, but what do the Kings got to do to change it up?
I want to see them pick a more aggressive composition, and that seems to be the answer every single time one of these teams gets run over inside the early game. It's, all right, well, let's shore up our early game. It's the only point of the game that every single Smite match gets to experience. At home, at the amateur level play, competitive, or even fringe competitive, at SOC and SEC, it is the only portion of the game that you are required to play. Not all games go late, not even all games go mid. But if you are getting destroyed in the early game, you need to clean that up. I want to see the Kings pick something that is easier to execute on in the early. Have something that can be that root of aggression. Get some strong compositions inside the 3v3 or the 2v2, and then you can start to build out from there.
Well, so far, everything's the same as Game 1. Yamoja, Raijin, and the Odin banned away on the Kings, Leviathans, Terra, Ymir, Tiamat. And, well, the answer, or the question I had posed at the end of the last one was, is Morgan Le Fay first pick worthy? It seemed like a resounding no, and apparently the Kings agree with that. They go for the Fafnir first this time around to strip it away. And the other thing I was specifically looking at here is the fact that the Kings, and I'm going to harken back to a set just last week, are not in a place where we've seen some of these teams. I mean, Scarabs against the Dragons have gotten absolutely demolished in Game 1, and then won Games 2 and 3. Bolts Also, I believe against the Dragons last week got absolutely run over in Game 1 and then won Games 2 and 3. Kings absolutely run over in Game 1. We'll have to see what they can do in Games 2 and 3. Baba Yaga, Gilgamesh even locked in for the Leviathans. But you get the Fafnir now on the side of the Kings, and they get this Fenrir that was banned away, and they get this Giannis that was just not seen in Game number 1.
Already a much stronger early game and clearer win condition here from the Kings. If Fenrir hits the ground running, if he's able to burn beads consistently, well, all of a sudden Ragnarok might as well just be an execute. Whoever you pick up should be able to die just because of how strong Sunder is, and that's generally the support pickup here. So I like what we see from this top 3 from the Kings. It's now about where are we going to go with this Hunter role. Is this actually going to be Fenrir in the jungle, or is it going to be support? You've got that flex potential, which is going to keep the Leviathans guessing. But I want to talk about Morgan Le Fay just a little bit here, because I think that she is in an interesting position in that she's not necessarily a first pick, first ban. She's not a one-size-fits-all type god. I think she's got a close parallel in a god like Morgan, and not just because their names are similar, but that when the Morgan has a composition built around her, when she's got a composition against her that can facilitate her own style, all of a sudden she is probably the best mage in the game, right? But it's not one that you could take in that first slot. You have to make sure that this is a game in which you're allowed to operate on this god, and I think Le Fay finds herself in a similar position.
It's going to be fun to see if they will go. I guess they won't be going back to it, right? Giannis, Baba Yaga are locked in. I guess she's probably locked out for this game. So unfortunately, no more Morgan Le Fay showcases. We're going to see more. I'm kind of surprised the Raijin over the Baba Yaga ban that had come through for the Kings, because that Baba Yaga kind of did numbers there in Game number 1. It's on her. It's Medusa banned away here from the Leviathans in their bottom 2. It's Cucullin on the other side. I can't think of any more way to tip your hat and show some respect over to Hardcore.
Yeah, might as well try and limit the guy on his first day back inside of the Soul Lane. And Gore, you say it was the Baba Yaga that was the issue, and I agree that there was a ton of damage outpouring, and even the few attempts we saw from the Kings to dive were kind of immediately stopped by Baba Yaga just having so much survivability inside of her own kit. But I'd argue that this Gilgamesh selection was the main issue for the Kings there. I mean, the Winds of Shamash was a nigh impossible tool to deal with. They were getting routed inside the jungle. They were getting forced into it inside their own towers. And even on that last Phoenix Siege, it was Panatom going in first, separating the team fight, and immediately setting up for Zapman to find a double kill. I think that this Gilgamesh is something that a lot of teams need to start addressing from Panatom. It's a god and player selection, a combo, if you would, that should not be allowed if you want to beat this team.
Well, I'm going to give you a Phase 1 meme here. Hey, Cucullin's banned. Might as well just pick up the King Arthur. Seems to work out pretty well here for the Leviathans. We'll see how it translates into the game. I believe the Kings will be locking in his lane opponent right now. Hachiman, once again, locked in for the Zapman, but Rom on the other side. And Mifflin, I'm going to be honest, this is one that I feel like we've seen a couple of times, but Rom has been bouncing back and forth as to whether or not people are going to stick with him or not. Last year, he was kind of a mainstay. How's that matchup go for the carries?
It's interesting. Rom is in a spot right now where the build does kind of fit his style. That attack speed stack only gets stronger with Silver Branch and his kit, which means that you can pop your 2, go up into the air, and utilize that additional power from Silver Branch to make your admittedly already incredibly strong ultimate even stronger. I think inside the lane itself, there's not going to be too much happening if Rom is allowed to take those auto trades, and he'll likely be looking for them. It's whether or not he's able to confirm the kills with his ultimate, because he's never going to be able to confirm it with his autos, because, well, Hachiman has a horse, a little bit easier for him to escape out of these situations. But I think Rom is a great selection into Baba Yaga. Okay. Once Baba Yaga's getting into that free cast range in the late game, she's already got a ton of HP that you have to work through. We see a lot of these guys on Rom initiate a fight with her ultimate. If I hit my shots, all right, let's go in. Let's get on that Baba Yaga. She's already injured. If I miss my shots, all right, let's back up. We'll wait for my ultimate to come back online, and then we can try again. It's almost it's just a primer, if you would, for the team fight, and I think it's going to help out this Kings draft a lot.
And I got to give shout-outs to Doug. Almost every time that we've watched any replays, anytime we see it, Rom ults are one of my favorite things to watch, and he always gets them up in the air and gets the snipes for us. So that's always fun to watch. I'm excited to see that. The Cerberus locked in, more than likely going up against the King Arthur. In lane, probably not going to be that big, but in the team fights later on, King Arthur Geb versus this Fafnir Cerberus. How are you feeling about the front lines this time?
Front lines are a little bit more equalized this time around. It is still going to slightly favor the Leviathans, I think, because their CC is a little bit easier to execute on. When you take a peek at the King's Draft, it's single target CC from Fafnir, single target CC from Fenrir, and then finally, who's likely going to act as the primary beads burner for this draft, the Cerberus with the Stygian Torment. It's all about this Cerberus. If he can burn off those relics, all of a sudden Fafnir and Fenrir are a much larger threat.
Well, I'll give you one more thing to look out for. 3 more kills for Zapman, and he'll get his 2,000th career kill. Let's see if he can get it this game after they rolled over the Kings in game 1, or the Kings back bounce. Dave, take it away.
Well, if it's anything like game number 1, Zapman's got a real good shot on grabbing those few kills here in game number 2. Dolson, Aggro, and Doug still bringing you the action. Shinto gets back onto this Baba Yaga aggro after, I mean, what, Decimation, Dominance, whatever you want to call it there in game number 1. A difference, though, for Big Man Tings, a little bit more mobility in that pick over there for the Giannis.
Just a bit of more, just more ability. I love the way that the Kings have changed, where they pick these 2 really immobile backliners and they just get absolutely gunned down in the team fights. And now they both go, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be around anymore. So they're going to use the Giannis ultimate in order to just disengage. Netroid's going to just eject north into the sky, and whenever a dive starts to happen onto him. I don't know who the Leviathans are planning to kill as easily as they were able to kill Morgan and Artemis last game, but I've got a feeling it's got to be the front line, and they're going to have to build some extra pen in order to make sure that happens.
Well, if the Atlantis Leviathans can make good on a lot of that same setup from game number 1, then great. But I think for the reasons you've highlighted and more, it will be more difficult. Captain Twig on a different pick this game as well. He's got the Fenrir for himself, as Fafnir was banned out. Fafnir was picked up, by Genetics. Picked away from Wrong You is really what I was trying to highlight there. So it's going to be a bit of a different look from Wrong You, admittedly, there, Aggro, where felt like game 1 kind of couldn't do any wrong there on the Fafnir pick. Things are going to be a little bit different this game on the Gab as far as setup goes.
Very different. Not only do you not have that ranged instant CC like you did last time around, which he was really getting the vast majority of these fights started, he doesn't have any range. He's got Geb without blink. He's going beads.
Everyone just
everyone on the Leviathans going beads, showing Captain Twig some respect. But this means Leviathans, despite having 3 of the 5 same picks and Arthur and Cucullin filling very similar roles, the change in support changes the entire game plan for the Leviathans. And I'm a little surprised. I mean, remember, this is a team that has had movement recently. Yarkor just moved back over to solo. They just picked up Zapman, and they've gone with 2 very different styles of compositions despite only changing, truthfully, 1.5 picks between them. Who is going to be getting these fights started for the Leviathans? And if I had to guess, I'd be looking in the jungle at Panatom and what he's going to be able to do on this Gilgamesh.
Yeah, Panatom was off to a great start there in game 1, but for reasons we've already highlighted, going to be difficult to find that same engage. So now we've talked a little bit in game 1 about how Captain Twig plays out of this jungle, some of the early game pressure that he has. Still early game pressure here on this Fenrir, aggro. We didn't see much in the early on the Robin. Now might be a game where it needs to be more than an insurance policy. It's got to be a little bit more active.
Well, nice job by Big Man Tink stealing that away, because he knows that Panatom is over here on the right-hand side trying to help Yarkor get a blue buff.
Some good damage from Yarkor. Splits its way between Variety and Captain Twig. And the Camelot Kings duo over here on the right looking a little bit worse for wear in the health department, but a little bit better off maybe in the mana department, at least for Captain Twig. And a little bit of damage from Yarkor makes its way through the blue buff in onto Captain Twig, and that might slow down any look at a re-engage, and it does. And that one's not sneaky at all. The Leviathans, They team up, they walk in, they steal the blue.
They go, hey, Variety and Twig, we're taking this. Or is anyone opposed? And they're thinking about it, and then they take a lot of damage from Yarkor. Variety has to beads because of the jump in from Panatom, and they decide that it's not worth the hassle, and they give it up on the other end. And remember that Twig did get his invade off on the right-hand side. He stole away Yarkor's blue buff on his side of the map.
Yep.
But then stood around for a long time and wasn't able to do a whole lot. So he's going to be a little bit down in XP in comparison to where Panatom is. So that Ragnarok that is so important for this composition, it's going to have a hard time finding value anyways against 5 sets of beads and a Geb shield. Now it's going to be a little bit longer until we even have that threat on the map.
You think Variety then draws the card? I'll hold that thought as Panatom comes over here to the right. Drop kick against the wall. There's no beads for the Cerberus, but just enough health and just enough mana on that leap. That might have been mana perfect as far as the jump out goes, so Variety will survive. And apt, I think, that we talk about Variety. 5 sets of beads for the Leviathans is what we've brought up. Beads, the easiest counter to the Ragnarok. Do you think then that the Stygian Torment from Variety becomes the surest form of some of that beads burn to get Twig in a position to get some of those single targets in these team fights?
I think it's got to be Genetics, honestly, who's got to find really efficient, high-value hammers in this game in order to force Geb Shield at the very least. It should get that cooldown every single time you land it in a little skirmish, or it's got to find priority targets where Geb is not around and can force beads that way, because yes, Stygian Torment can get beads or punish those who have used beads, but it is easy to react with your own CC immunity, and there's a lot of that for the Leviathans. I mean, Yarkor can easily dash out of that Stygian Torment pretty quickly because of knock-up immunity. Shinto's got CC immunity, Rongyu has CC immunity, Zapman has CC immunity. So it's really, can you catch Panatom when he doesn't have beads or Rongyu isn't around with a Geb Shield? And I think that how long this point is taking me to make is typical for me, number one, but also indicative of how many boxes the Kings have to check for this composition to work in time. And so even though I think the Leviathans have really changed up what they're doing, and that might be difficult for them, it's also going to be a tough sort of sledding for the Kings to find purchase on what they want to do with this comp.
Here's the good news for the Camelot Kings. They haven't fallen drastically behind at this point in this game, whereas in game number 1, it felt like Shinto already was going to be so difficult to deal with, effectively even. Golden XP tick their way up just a little bit towards the Leviathans and just down a little bit towards the Camelot Kings. So we were even here in game number 2, and so that means Shinto is not going to get all of those free stacks on those early stacking items. We've mentioned how that happens anyway because of the speediness of some of the builds that have been happening with the Baba Yaga. But if nothing else, you're keeping the late game pick out of the mid lane that ran wild in the early to mid game in the late game. It's a late game issue right now, and it's not an issue yet.
And you still have plenty of mobility on your side. You've got the option to really turn up the gas any point wherever this Fenrir shows up, and you can start to really invade some of these buffs, because I think that you've just got a better skirmish around them in comparison to what you had last game. I mean, at no point was Netroid stealing away Zap's lane Scorpion in game 1. Very different look.
It's a different look, and look at this. Captain Twig exerts some early pressure. It's Rongyu who gets stunned down, and the Ragnarok is in as well. A nice Cataclysm counters out the Brutalize, but it's not enough. His big man Tings with through space and time gets the damage, but now Shinto rotates in, turns into a house, and gets a kill on a Twig.
Genetics is already de-transformed, and Zap is in a great spot to pinch onto him. Mounted Archery hits all 3.
Oh, and he gets an auto attack on the end of it as well. But now he's got to dodge the snipes. 1 and 2 both hit, and Netroid returns the favor. It's a 2-2 split across the board. Both Hunters grab a kill, both mid laners grab a kill as well.
And both supports end up falling. So overall, I don't think you're feeling too bad here if you're the Leviathan. Yes, Rongyu got first blooded, but you were able to answer back. You got Shinto a kill and an assist, very importantly, and you're able to keep Panatom in a good spot in this game. But I like the aggressiveness from the Kings. They aren't just going, all right, well, they've got 5 beads and a Geb Shield, so I guess I can't use my Ragnarok at any point. They're doing the right thing, which is forcing these cooldowns, and now hopefully they can try and continue that pressure in order to keep it up.
And you mentioned Panatom minus beads could be an early target here for the Camelot Kings. Panatom didn't die in that fight, but did use his beads. So there's a minute and a half now, especially looking at the Ragnarok timer there for Captain Twig, 3/4 of the way there. It's a very specific sort of storyline that I'm laying out here, but something I think you keep your eyes on. Might, if nothing else, slow down Panatom from trying to find some fights here in the next minute or so.
Interesting build here for Twig to go Serrated Edge first and foremost. I mean, this is usually thought of as your mid to late game pen item for a lot of different assassins. You get extra bit power whenever your abilities are on cooldown, so your auto attack canceling all the time. Fenrir is great with Serrated Edge, gives him that lifesteal as well. And even though it feels a little odd, I kind of like it in this situation because you've got double Warrior and a Guardian on the other side, so that 20% pen is slightly more valuable than it typically would be. And giving Fenrir just the stats of movement speed, power, and lifesteal alongside that penetration means that he's going to be able to get a lot more value out of Seething Howl, which is already Fenrir's probably best ability. Just gives you so much power and lifesteal every time you press the button. In fact, Doug, if you don't mind, can we take a look and see what Twig is leveling in his ability order? Because I wonder with this build, it's pretty common in general to be going with a Seething Howl max. He's actually not, interestingly enough. So we'll see how much value you can get out of that Brutalize. Because normally we see junglers go pretty often with that Seething Howl max because it spreads your damage across your whole kit. We'll see how he does.
Player damage, speaking of damage, all for Yarkor. It's not even really close. Variety uses his ultimate to survive the onslaught here. Ultimate instead of bead seems like the proper trade out there, and Variety will be able to stay alive a little bit. And I think you look at that damage chart, you're wondering how Variety's been able to stay alive, and I think the way Variety's played that lane while not falling behind, despite the onslaught of damage we know that Yarkor is going to bring, is definitely a hat off to him. So being able to stay relevant in the laning phase, not falling behind to a very good pick on a very good player, I think is a big boon to the cause here for the Kings.
I mean, this is, among the Guardians, you'd expect to be most lane dominant on Cerberus or Yorm or Cthulhu. Like, those are the ones that actually fight much more like traditional warriors.
See some Yorm?
No, we're not going to see some Yorm. I don't think so anytime soon. That god has his own set of issues right now. But among the ones that are super playable, Cerberus and Cthulhu are definitely the ones that you would expect to see some sort of actual fight in the lane.
Yep.
And with Vamshroud being good right now, I'm surprised we don't see more Cerberus solo, because I think it's a great pick.
It is a great pick for Variety right now. And so if the Camelot Kings are able to play around that, maybe here with Captain Twig rotating on towards the right. Yarkor does have beads, also has the ultimate, catches it out onto Captain Twig. Genetics is rotating over as well. Could be a tower dive, but the tower dive won't be necessary. A couple ultimates used, but it confirms the kill, and down goes the King Arthur.
Great patience there from Twig and Variety. Hold their ultimates until a little bit later, but Netrioid, he might be ejecting, but he's going to get a portal right away!
Oh, Big Man Tings with the big brain play, and the portal out keeps Netrioid alive. What a rotation from BMT. Hey, look, doesn't always have to be damage on the through space and time. Sometimes you just got to help out your hunter, and Netrioid gets out of jail for free.
Love that heads-up play there from Big Man and from Netrioid to stick the ultimate right away and give Big Man, he rolls to a wall in particular to make sure that he can actually get through that portal immediately and not get CC'd on landing. Pretty stark contrast to the Artemis and Morgan Le Fay of Game 1.
He's just dead there, right?
Oh my God, he's dead. He's so dead at that point. Very, very different, where instead of the guess I'll die, it's he's out of there. You know, he's safe and free. So nice little bailout there from Big Man Tings and Netrioid.
It's always important after a game like that happens like it did in game number 1, where the Leviathans, they roll over you, and there's no two ways about that. And I even look back to the Bolts and the Dragons set from last weekend, where the Dragons just decimate the Bolts in game 1, similar to how the Leviathans decimate the Kings in game 1 of this set.
Right.
It's all about how you bounce back in the first few minutes of the next game. That's pretty indicative of how at least game 2 is going to go, and maybe the rest of the set. And I think you referenced it really well there, Aggro, where at the end of the cast for set number 1, you referenced it really well, where the Kings are a very good team. They just got to set their feet, change up some strategy to avoid what happened in game 1 happening again here in game 2, and they have avoided that. If anything, they flipped the script a little bit. They've got a 2,000 gold lead here 12 or so minutes into the game. They've kept some of those late game priority picks a little bit in check.
Right. I think that, I don't blame the Kings for continuing to go with the exact same strategy they've won the last 2 to 3 weeks with, which is late game Guardian, late game solo laner, late game carries, early game jungler, farm it out, win late game. That and you're gonna do, if that strategy is working, you do it until someone beats you, and then it goes, okay, now we've got to be ready. This is what we've been practicing over the last few weeks in order to prepare for this moment. That it does not bother me whatsoever. 16-0 or whatever it was doesn't faze me, because the Leviathans came in with perfect info, as they should have.
Zapman has his ultimate, and that'll secure his escape here as the 2v1. Didn't worry him all that much, had beads there as well, but again, an ultimate used instead of the beads. Feels pretty good there for Zap. So, some pressure for the Camelot Kings here on the left side of the map. We haven't seen the Fury rotated to just yet. Oracles are down for the Leviathans, so if the Camelot Kings started something like this up, would be a little bit more obvious here. But the pace of the game, though, Aggro, I mean, we've mentioned how the Kings feeling comfortable with the way things are going here. A couple of the picks for the Leviathans, notably the Baba Yaga, might not be too worried. Big Man Tings, since through space and time on through the wall there. Variety leaps on in, has his ultimate, uses it, but Shinto able to dash on away. Wrong, not able to do the same, but not enough damage in onto the Geb. But here comes the rotation from the rest of the Kings.
Finally, the rest of the Kings are here, but Rongyu's still alive, and Shinto putting out crazy DPS.
Wow, Captain Twig's still alive in this fight. Will the fire chase him down? I think that the Fenrir might be out, might be alive. The Leviathans don't have much to re-engage on this. Genetics, Netroid still both have their ultimates. If a little bit more damage finds that backline, maybe you could look for some snipes, but both teams happy to keep everyone in the fray, keep everyone alive, but nearly unlucky on the transformation from Genetics.
A good stun from Yarkor forces Netroid to roll away, but overall, a lot of all 5 ultimates used for the Leviathans, 4 out of 5 for the Kings. But it's beads down for Rongyu.
And only Rongyu.
No relics really down, no long-term relics, at least 65 seconds on Genetic Sunder charge before that comes back up. Starting to see that even though you get the Geb, you pick him up with the Stygian Torment, the CC chain was a little bit off there. Variety didn't land the Paralyzing Spit off his own ultimate, which you really need to land. Maybe that would have been enough to kill Rongyu and lock him in place a little bit longer, but he's only getting tankier from here. And overall, the builds aren't in a position where they can handle that quite yet. But what we keep seeing is in the late game, carries, not having to build boots, getting a 6th true damage item faster than ever before, ends up letting them kill tanks pretty well, alongside Sunder being very good, of course. So maybe that won't change for Rongyu's favor, but instead in favor of the Kings.
Did sort of get cut off by the engagement there, with Shinto still scaling. The Leviathan's far from out of this game. It's not nearly a big enough gold lead for the Camelot Kings to feel comfortable enough with the way some of the scalings look at. That's core 3 items that worked so well for Shinto in game 1. Now online here, again in game number 2. Warlock Staff, fully stacked Charon's Coin, Soul Reaver there as well. On the other side, Big Man Tings, a little bit of CDR in the starter item start there. Charon's Coin, Soul Gem, and Soul Reaver, so both of these mid laners and a 2-level lead for Big Man Tings could be some big burst damage, but the collapse might be in from the Camelot Kings. They jump over the wall, grab the Ragnarok on Arangi, but the Geb survives yet again, and now Panatom into the backline. Zapman will complete the kill over onto 1, but then it's the immediate return kill by Netroid. Both hunters getting involved here. Stygian Torment onto Arangi, and the Geb, he's rolling out yet again. Luckily, Variety burns him down.
But Shinto's got to do the damage now, up into the house, and everyone is grouped from the Kings. Shinto raining fire on the Kings.
That is a dream ultimate for Shinto, but look at that. Big Man Tings turns around some damage, but it's a double from the Baba Yaga. Shinto hoping and praying that someone had stuck around a little bit further. 3-for-3 trade across the board. Zapman and Shinto still alive. Big Man Tings and Genetics on the other side.
Man, really, really close fight. And again, the execution just a little bit off there from the Kings, missing a few key abilities, it looked like to me, but not Big Man Tings. He slams his ultimate directly into Rongyu. Netroid as well gets up into the air in order to buy himself time in the midst of that Gilgamesh ultimate. Doesn't want to stick in those wins for too long. And that ability for both these backliners to be hard to chase down really paid off there for the Kings. But they could not handle Shinto as soon as he came in, and Shinto did the vast majority of the damage for the Leviathans in that team fight. Just really did too much with that ultimate. And I don't know how that's going to change for the Kings. They've got to maybe save some of these ultimates, save that through space and time in order to drop everyone directly onto Shinto in melee range once he goes up into that ult. Because once you're in it, you're putting out good damage, but that's about it.
Captain Twig is going to get collapsed on here by 3 members of the Leviathans, and that'll be pretty simple. Probably the most simple kill we've seen so far here this game. And Zapman having a great performance. We wondered how he would slot into this team. Would it be Facilitator? By the way, 3 kills. I believe that was the Mark Gore set. And so that kill, I think, is Zapman's 2000th
I believe you're right.
Kill.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
We do the round of applause. The
balloons are falling. You guys can't see it, but they'll be cleaned up by the time it comes to us. Yeah, for sure. Overall, it's exactly what I expected for Zap. He's going in early in these team fights, and Shinto's coming in late, unscathed, and it's working out for him.
Now it's finally Gold Fury started up. 18.5 minutes into the game here. Through space and time flies in, clips onto the Fury, but it was reset well by the Leviathans. Some health bars are somewhat low here, notably Zapman. So if there's some damage connecting onto Zap, could be an opening opportunity for the Kings. But it looks like the Kings just wanted to reset the Fury and they did what they came to do.
And the first sign of some lack of synergy right there for the Leviathans. Zap seemed to want to stay on that Gold Fury. The rest of them pretty interested in getting off of it at that point. And for good reason, because Zap was getting low.
Now the Camelot Kings restart the Gold Fury and confirm the Gold Fury. Yarkor gets stunned down right at the right time and then into the portal as well. And Zap can't really step up. He's got the ultimate, but he's beneath half HP here. Though if he stays far enough in the back line, he could make a difference here in this fight. Panatom dancing big man Tings around his own portal who can't make his way on through. And then the wind of Shamash puts him in the dirt. And the Giannis, no mobility there on that one, and the Leviathans grab a quick kill.
What a play from Panatom, man. He just plays bouncer on the outside of that portal and makes sure that big man has been denied entry.
Oh, and it's a double kick in the back line, and the big setup from the Leviathans is their follow-up. Yarkor says yes, and Shinto still has that ultimate. Look for the Camelot Kings to maybe funnel forward here. Snipes connecting onto the King Arthur, but not enough, and now it's the Ragnarok from Captain Twig to bring him right back into range, and Netrioid gets another.
And Shinto just tries to dissuade anything further, but the Kings weren't interested anyways. They got their kill on the Yarkor and got out of there. Maybe a little bit greedy from the Leviathans to go for that tier 1 with how low Zapman had gotten. He is life-stealing, or just back to base, but he was a little bit below half HP, no ultimate, and Netrioid still healthy enough in order to stand tall, but he loses both of his relics there. Now big man, no beads, no blink for Twig. You're looking at what the Kings have, and I like the Leviathan's odds going into this next fight. Yes, Panatom and Yarkor, neither of them have their blink or their beads. But that's, you know, they're going to get in there, and they're going to do their job, and if they die for it, so be it. Zapman and Shinto, they're looking pristine right now. They're looking in a much better position to be able to stand and do their damage in the next team fight.
Zapman will look to continue that around this FG.
He's on the left,
though. So quick burning away. You're right. Zapman won't be here for this fight. So if the Leviathans want to contest, which I'm sure they do, they've got to do it without their hunter. Captain Twig has found a double stun on the back of this FG. The FG is low here. Stygian Torment used, but Panatom drops right back down, and the Camelot Kings secure the FG, but Panatom took a whole lot of damage in there on the contest, and the Brutalize from Captain Twig finalizes the kill.
And the portals for big man puts him in a perfect position to cut him off. Wrong you toast. No way he gets away, and Shinto might be next.
Netroid's the one who picks up that kill, and now Zapman does join the fight here. Big man Tings has got one in this fight as well as Yarkor goes down. It's only the carries for the Leviathans right now, and the death timer's right around that 30-second mark, so it's important that Shinto and Zap stay alive. And stay alive they do, but it's 5 members of the Kings with the FG.
And that's just the Leviathans taking too big of a breath for a moment. They relax for just a moment. They get their sentry cleared on the right-hand side, and they start heading over, but not a whole lot of urgency, it felt like. Zapman's doing Draugr on the left side of the map. That he's not going to be a part of that team fight. Really great FG pull there from the Kings.
Oh, good hammer from Genetics. That could put Shinto in an awkward spot. Zapman gets enough damage to kill off Captain Twig, though, but now the mid lane Phoenix starts to get siege, but the reinforcements are in from the Leviathans, and it's big man Tings who has to use the portal to get out and away, but Panatom, he wants to leap right on back in. Big man Tings escapes for the time being, but it's half health across the board for the Kings.
Rongyu slowly walking in, gets his Cataclysm off, but the portal's good. Netrioid still standing a little bit longer.
And Netrioid's got the double, and now it's Rongyu and Yarkor. It's a shuffle. It's a revolving door for the Leviathans on defense right now. But defend they do. The mid lane Phoenix still stands.
Man, I think this lack of blink for Rongyu is just making it really difficult for the Leviathans. I mean, even go back to that Fire Giant pull, where it's a great call, but then the frontline zoning is so good from the Kings in order to keep Panatom and Yarkor and Rongyu off of that FG. No one could really get past them because Yarkor and Panatom didn't have blink up. That was on cooldown. We just talked about it. And it's just a stun from the Fenrir into a stun from the Fafnir on the other guy who slows the other guy, and then it's a ultimate from Variety. It's all of this CC that they layered so well in order to make sure that the backline could secure that FG. And I'm just seeing how different this composition is for the Leviathans and how much harder it has been for Rongyu to be able to set up for Shinto and set up for Zapman. And Panatom and Yarkor have done a good job of that. But now you're starting to see where it has become difficult for Rongyu to really get onto these priority targets and get good Cataclysms off, because this backline dive is not peelable via Cataclysm the vast majority of the time. It's Rom snipes, it's Giannis snipes, it's an ultimate from the Cerberus, it's an ulting Fenrir. those things don't care about Cataclysm being in the area around the back line. They go over the top of those options. So this Geb pick certainly not out of this game. You know, this is where Geb is still in a strong position. He's a good late game god, but I think we're seeing the difference in the impact that Rongi was able to have on the Fafnir in comparison to this Geb.
And it was CC, to rewind there just a little bit, it was CC earlier on in the game that wasn't layered properly on a couple of occasions from the Kings. We were concerned about some of the chain CC not connecting, and now we are seeing when it does connect, when these players do make good on the picks that they've brought, how that front line can look. It looks like on the KDA column here, Agra, that the carries are exchanging haymakers, and in a way they are.
Yeah.
But so much of this work being done as well by the front lines, giving them that space.
Yep.
And really what a difference I think the picks make, to reiterate that point, from Big Man Tings and Netrioid to keep themselves in these fights.
And it's also this build from Big Man, very different than the Heroine Dionysus build, but it is letting him really hit tanks hard in comparison to what you would normally see from the Giannis.
Captain Twig alone behind the Leviathans, and he's found Zapman, and Zapman has to dash forward, but then immediately leaves the rest of this fight. Stygian torments, not enough, but the through space and time is, and it's Big Man Tings back on the board. And now it's a bit of a split team fight with the Leviathans. They've got a second wind in this engagement. They've got range damage from Shinto, and that's enough to push the Kings back.
Yeah, good damage from Shinto, and Panatom in particular really locking in Netrioid, who had great snipes going up top. I mean, he's 6'2" and 6. He's looked very good on this ROM, and you're seeing that long-range damage really come into play. It was a great ultimate from Tings and a good ultimate from Netrioid, and as Mifflin said on the desk, you don't have to worry about diving this Baba with her at full HP with relics and a house cooldown still available to her. That was just, let's poke her down to half HP in house form before our tanks even get near her, and that really sets the tone so the Leviathans cannot continue to chase on that play. Good accuracy coming from the back line.
And it was a good wrap around the backside for Captain Twig there. He found Zapman initially, but Zapman actually played that one pretty well as the rest of the Leviathans, where Zap still has both of its actives as the FG falls off. And the next FG respawns, Zapman will still have both of those, still waiting for that ultimate to come back online. I think you got to call it a win, right? That the Leviathans were able to hold on to that mid lane Phoenix under that FG siege. It got so low.
Yep.
Outside of their towers being down and the gold shifting to the Kings a little bit because of that, their base still stands strong. They're not worried about fire waves right now.
And look, I mean, the Kings are up 10K, and that's important at this point in the game. I mean, you're looking at upgraded starters for a lot of them, but you're also looking at upgraded starters for the Leviathans. I mean, Yarkor's upgraded his, so has Shinto, so has Rongyu, so has Zapman. You're not looking at a major difference in itemization quite yet. Maybe the big difference is Big Man has finished the Rod over Shinto, finishing either Chronos Pendant or Rod on his side.
Fire Giant started up by the Camelot Kings. Panatom jumped on by Captain Twig on the left. And so that'll slow down a lot of the engage that the Leviathans have had. It's been this Gilgamesh, the drop kicks, the ultimate. That space control has been so important to even just slow down these fights for the Leviathans. But the Camelot Kings, they send that 1-2, the genetics variety front line right on forward, and that'll keep the Camelot Kings at bay just a little bit longer.
Again, it's up to the front line for the Kings. Can they stop this dive from coming in?
Rongyu rolls on through here, but the Fire Giant's been reset. Not low enough for a steal, not low enough for a confirm either. Captain Twig stunned on through. Frenzy gets popped up in the air, goes Netrioid, looking for the snipes onto the back line, and he's got Zapman down to half HP, but Panatom is there and waiting, but Panatom has to leave. Get the shield on the other end of things to keep himself in the fight. And look at Variety, he's controlling 3 of the Leviathans over here on the right. The Camelot Kings, they might not need kills because they can go back for the FG.
Yeah, but they've used a lot here, Dave. I mean, Genetics is in this ultimate form. No Frenzy available to him either. If the Leviathans can get in there, Shinto still has both his relics up.
And Shinto is full HP and full mana. So is Yarkor, so is Rongyu, but there's no attempt on the other end from the Leviathans, and the Camelot Kings will get the FG yet again here in this game. And this time, 2 exposed Phoenixes, no towers to work through in mid or left.
But another, I can't help but call it out every single time I see it. A player gets stunned, beads, and received Geb Shield. This time it was Yarkor, who's had a much harder time on this King Arthur in comparison to that Cucullin. See the difference in what Variety was able to do, 1v3 in the back line, where Yarkor is there with his carries trying to peel away the Cerberus.
On the Cerberus, I need to help out with a kill here on the Panatom, or maybe not, as Big Man Tings has plenty of damage there. There is the Cerberus. The
shield.
Panatom, he continues to live here, but the portal on the other end all but secures his demise, and it's Big Man Tings with his 6th of the game Now it's time for the Camelot Kings mid laner to put on a bit of a show. The right side Phoenix being sieged here. It's a beautiful double ultimate from Wrongyu, and Captain Twig has to leave. Now Shinto gets stunned over as well. Snipes yet again from Netrioid, but the right side Phoenix is already down.
Man, it just feels like the Leviathans just don't have that initiation that they had last game. They can't get in onto the Camelot Kings. They're relying on this poke damage from Shinto, which he's putting out good damage for, but also feeling it from Big Man Tings.
That's right, Big Man Tings, top of the damage charts here. Zapman gets stunned, but doesn't take any damage on the back end. Instead, the eyes were on the Phoenix. That's where the Camelot Kings were looking, and that's what the Camelot Kings get. So it could be 3 Phoenix down situation here. You can see the Leviathans had a similar mindset in what they might need to defend, but you got fire minions on right, you're going to have fire minions pouring down mid. The Camelot Kings, now remember, they haven't even gone back. They're going to get this Primal Fury, all that extra gold, probably buy some power pots, finish off those builds, and then maybe return for the left Phoenix.
And I love the way that the Kings have really played around what the Leviathan's composition is doing well, and that's that they aren't going to, you can't let this team fight get too spread out, because the Kings have the much better long-range damage. They've got the Rom snipes, they've got the Yana snipes. So instead, they're playing very front to back. They're using their damage over the top from their back line. Netrioid is hitting Zap.
Yep.
Big Man Tings is trying to hit a frontliner and give some portals to the back line, potentially end up picking off a carry that way. While and as soon as Netrioid is done hitting those snipes, he's coming down and hitting frontline. They're using it as a deterrent, and because the Leviathans have had so much trouble getting into the back line as a unit this time around, instead it's been much more individual dives between Panatom and Yarkor, the Kings are able to keep this pace a lot better. I wonder if the Leviathans could really just say, who cares? You know, I'm going to take half my health from Rom snipes no matter where I am. I wonder if as soon as Unstable Vortex is down, if Steve could just hop on the horse and get his hands dirty.
Maybe.
Because right now, that front line isn't getting that support. They aren't getting that damage to back them up that they need, because Leviathans are so worried about this long-range damage from the Kings. Maybe if the Leviathans can compact these team fights, they'll go a little better.
What's got to happen now, right? I mean, this is the fight where the Leviathans have to make that change. Wrongyu gets a 3-man knockup, but there's nothing on the follow-up front. And now the third and final Phoenix will go down. Shinto has to use his ultimate here as well. And look at the delay that the Camelot Kings are bringing out. They've slowed things down here. Some fire reaching the backline. Netrioid rolls on out here. Panatom jumps on in, onto the AD carry, and nearly enough damage from Shinto. Variety taken low, but there's a big stun on the other side, and Big Man Tings completes the kill on the Panatom, and now it's Captain Twig with the re-jump on him, but Zapman, he's returning damage, he's got the stun, and down goes Twig.
But you gotta worry about these fire minions. 3 waves coming in, but the Leviathans know they need some kills here.
Yeah, Yarkor needs to chase this one down. Variety will run away. Genetics could re-engage here as well.
Stuck.
Look at this, Variety's in behind. He's found Shinto. Zapman can't get back in through the base, and the fire
Variety's done with this one.
Variety might just end this game, and the Camelot Kings send us to a game 3.
Just much better execution from the Kings this time around. The adjustment in picks and bans makes a huge difference. Going from the Morgan Le Fay to the Giannis makes a big difference. The Artemis to the Rom makes a big difference. But maybe the biggest one, taking that Fafnir out of Wrongyu's hands. I'd imagine the Leviathans are going to take first pick. That Fafnir has got to be on the mind of both of these teams. I think the Leviathans just kind of got caught up in the way that draft worked. I think that the draft really held them back in this game.
Agreed. And the Camelot Kings show us why we figured this would be a very, very close set. It's all down to a Game 3 decider. We'll get there right after this.
it up to the teams tied for second to make sure we go to game number 3. Kicking off this week. Last week we were a little nervous about getting any game 3. This time around, we get it right off the bat. Thanks everyone again for tuning in here to the SMITE Pro League Season 8, all powered by Alienware. And speaking of Alienware, go to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITE8W for some amazing discounts. Remember, you can also build and play like our pros. They're on the Aurora Ryzen R10 desktop, as well as they're playing on these Alienware 25-inch 240 hertz gaming monitors. And you want to go right there. You see the link, smitegame.com/Alienware, using code SMITE8W to pick up those or any of the other amazing products. You can also go and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and go to alienwarearena.com to join in for their global community for giveaways and all sorts of other stuff. I know that's where I got an Alienware raw code way back when I was trying to scoop those up. They were rare too to try and get. But if I was able to get that one, you too could be a part of those giveaways, so make sure you go there. But Mifflin, here we are. Game 3. Look at us. We made it.
We did it. That was all us.
We put in all the work. Look at the hardest load lifting that could possibly be done. No, amazing turnaround there from the Kings. A lot closer throughout the duration of this game, but you could definitely see the gap building up throughout that game. First few minutes, first 15 minutes, first 20 minutes even, feels pretty close. Then all of a sudden you get these snipes from Netroid, and it's just creating too much distance between the backlines for the Kings and the backlines of the Leviathans.
It's that range damage that we were concerned about, the ability to say, all right, Baba Yaga's an issue, let's not play against Baba Yaga today.
Let's just kill her.
Yeah, we don't even have to kill her. Let's just make her so hurt she doesn't want to fight anymore. And that's exactly what happened the majority of the time in this one. We also got to see a couple of phenomenal setups from Captain Twig. I'm talking Fenrir Ultimate just walking to 4 people, drag one back, and then set up for the squad. I mean, it was just a tough one, and I think it's a byproduct of this draft that we're starting to see from the Leviathans. In particular, I thought that Rongyu really struggled to find his spots with the Cataclysm because he went for Sunder instead of Blink, meaning that he doesn't really have a great way to initiate these fights. And you can even remember the casters talking about it around this Fire Giant fight. They said, okay, this looks like something the Leviathans could potentially fight into, but they didn't have any way to close gap. Instead, hover just on the outskirts of Fire Giant, and Fire Giant goes down. Can't be standing that close to a Fafnir who's got the longest jump in the game, and immediately engages on him. And from there, it was all Kings.
I mean, it seemed clean. I don't want to say easy for them, because that definitely is not the way I would describe that game. They won it, and they definitely had to work to get there, although you can start to see where things got a little more out of hand. Even still, though, that end rush towards the base felt like it could kind of go either way. And I had made a joke during last Mix and Ban saying that it's difficult to try and control Rongyu. I don't know if Geb was necessarily a problem, but I don't know that it was necessarily the solution either. It felt like a response to all the CC, but Geb, look, I love Geb. He has a special place in my heart. We've seen metas where he is the go-to. I mean, the meme, right? Way back when we used to listen to the player comms, all you could hear was gib, 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 gib. Very, very fun, but he didn't seem to really bring it this game.
No, he did not. It was a couple of issues. Sometimes we see some stone
there was
shields
more than
come
just that.
through, and some beads were used at the exact same time. Got to be able to stagger those out. Maybe it's communication. Rongyu doesn't generally go towards gods like the Geb, and I think here in Game 3, we might get to see him on something a little bit more comfortable. Wouldn't be surprised if we even see the Horus or something along those lines.
I want to say it was Betty Smite. I think Dan Edits on Twitter is the handle there, but I remember seeing that Geb is actually a 5-head pick whenever Zap's on your team, because you know he's not using the beads before that shield comes through, which is a great meme, but hey, it didn't unfortunately work out
I don't think Zap beads it. I think it was everybody else. Maybe Dan was right there.
We got to roll it back. Let's watch it with excruciating detail to figure it out. Doesn't seem like the Leviathans are too worried, though. Again, with the dominating fashion that we saw in Game 1, I'm assuming they're not going to be too stressed out. But the Kings, with a great adaptation, specifically, realistically, the first thing they changed in picks and bans was grabbing that Fafnir first. Do they go the similar route? Just ban those same 3 and go ahead and grab the Fafnir?
Yeah, I don't think the Kings need to shift up too much, but that's not to say that the Leviathans didn't get something great in response last time around.
Baba Gilgamesh.
Yeah, hard to argue against that. Maybe you want to shore that up a little bit. The Kings do win Game 2, so I'm sure that they're happy with how the P's and B's do roll out, but I am expecting some significant adjustments here in Game 3 from the Leviathans.
Well, the first adjustment we're going to be seeing in game number 3 is the fact that the Leviathans are going to be first pick. Woo! So they get to change things up all around here. The Kings might still be able to get their hands on some of those top coveted picks, But it's definitely going to be a different style for them. Also worth mentioning once again, we saw her once already. Morgan Le Fay available this week. Didn't do too much in game number 1. I'm going to be trying to figure out a way to hype her up outside of New God, but didn't get a lot done there in game 1. We'll see if either of these teams feel confident enough to pull her back. Terra and Yamoja. Hey, guess what? Oh, a Giannis. That one is changing things up.
Yeah, immediately an adaptation here from the Leviathans, who switch sides on the pick order and also remove a huge asset of this Kings draft. And the Kings going to fire back and go ahead and ban the Raijin on there. And a good little bit of emphasis from both squads towards the mid lane. And, well, there it is, Gore. I mean, everything we had thought might come through in the first pick slot, that Fafnir that had been highlighted, even the Tiamat, Raijin, all banned out. But what does that leave available? Le Fay's out there. You could go towards something like the Kakulin. Gilgamesh still available, but instead it's an Odin lock-in. Yeah, I was expecting pivots. I wasn't expecting pivots this quickly.
I was, so Odin has been banned both of these games. The other one that was banned both of these games that I thought for sure we were going to see was the Ymir. I was trying to figure out how to YMCA, but you spell Ymir, and I couldn't figure out the R without having to incorporate my legs into that one. But Odin, of all things, I mean, Odin, I'm going to harken back to the Bolts once again. Look, they're 5-0. It's an easy team to talk about. Loved running and have run a couple of times that Odin plus the Morrigan. Shinto's a pretty good the Morrigan player, so we might be getting to see one of those very convoluted Morrigan but not Morgan Le Fay names come onto the board. Then finally you get the Odin for Leviathans. You also have to trade out that Ymir for the Kings.
And the Kings still have a pretty good power selection here. Again, the Gilgamesh is still available and has been a great tool, so the Kings going to go ahead and strip that one away. Worth noting that Odin does have decent flex potential, could go into the jungle, more often than not does go into that solo lane. So with Panatom kind of shifting up his style recently towards that facilitator role, wouldn't be overly surprised if we see him take the Odin into the jungle just so he can blink around, find these cages, lock down this Ymir, and make it very hard for him to operate in the early game. Or Yarkor could do the exact same thing, but when we do see Odin played inside the solo lane, generally likes to rotate out a lane very early on. It's not too surprising, it's not too uncommon to see Odin fall about a level behind, because instead of sitting in lane and farming like a lot of these other solo laners, he's rotating out, buying blink, and trying to use that cage before Phantom gets bought.
Goes Ymir, your wall. Hey, it looks nice. Here's 8 of them, fool. What you gonna do? See if you can fight. Is it 8? I'm gonna say it's 8. It might actually only be 6.
It's like a... it has to be 8. It's
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an 8.
Yeah,
cool. Like
Nailed
a stop
it.
sign.
Stop
right?
sign, exactly. We know it. Octagon, that's the name of the shape. Actually dropping them into the octagons.
UFC
Dave,
skin
gotta
Ren.
use that one on the cast, man. I know you just walked in here. Gotta drop them into the octagon when this Odin cage gets dropped. Cerberus is going to be the lock-in here. Stripped away variety, I believe. Or was it genetics? Either way, both of them playing out of their minds. That's a frontliner stripped away from the Kings that was there previously.
And now it's a good bit of CC here for the Leviathans, who generally only have single target inside of the Baba Yaga and the Odin. So now we get a good beads burner. And, well, if Odin's burning single target beads, Stygian Torment should be able to do something inside of these team fights. A great tool to facilitate anything that you want. If the Leviathans want to pivot towards something a la Sam for Soccer, maybe a Hunbots out of the jungle with his Odin inside of solo, then all of a sudden every single beads on the Kings is going to be under threat consistently and constantly. I was getting excited for that hover, but instead it is a Merlin locked in for the Kings.
I was going to start memeing and talking about like Opwash or something like, okay, hear me out. Don't lock in Discordia here. Lock in something we haven't seen this year and have no real reason other than it was just where my brain was starting to drift to while I saw them hover Discordia. But it's the Merlin that is locked in there for the Kings. Keeping things a little spicy for us. A different pick each game out of the mid lane for them. It's a dodgy ban from the Kings, trying to what looks like limit Panatom. And there's Xing Chen on the other side. Look, there's no coaches playing this game. That one is a direct target to try and control the front line on the other side.
Yeah, it looks like Slaney put the fear of God into the Leviathans there with that Xing Chen ban rolling through. And memes be memes, Xing Chen is still an incredibly great pick out of the solo lane. Good CC core, a ton of survivability, great beads burning as well. So, don't want to go ahead and deal with that one. And I really do like what the Kings have already picked with their top 3. Great objective burn between the Merlin and the Gilgamesh, and objective secure brought to you by Ymir. The Shards of Ice is going to be potentially the hardest hitting ability on the map right now.
Deadly, I think, in the right circumstances. On her, locked in on the other side, though. There's something that we've, roll it back, go to the pregame tapes, you look at Netroid, and most of the highlights I remember seeing were on this On her, so making things a little more interesting. Kind of curious to see him shimmy away from the ROM, though. Like, it was banned by the Kings Game 1, picked by the Kings Game 2. I thought it was a phenomenal performance. Is it just, I guess, the matchup specifically here could be Odin support Cerberus solos, Cerberus support Odin solo? I mean, there's so many ways to flip-flop the Leviathans draft. Is On her just safer?
On her is just straight up safer. You not only are you going to have a leap to deal with that Odin cage, but some CC immunity inside the ultimate that doesn't leave you immobile and standing still, means that you're going to be able to get out of these situations a little bit more easily. For example, Rom can use his ultimate to make sure Stygian Torment doesn't toss you into the jaws of death, but, well, you're standing still inside the air. You're going to land inside of a cage. Doesn't feel too great instead. Now, On her going to have a little bit more survivability, but this Leviathans draft already has a lot more consistent CC than we saw last time around. The casters have brought up a lack of engagement inside of that one. Well, they've got it here, and they've got it in spades.
I mean, Hu Yi, Fenrir, like, the last two still feel pretty powerful. Hu Yi maybe a little less on the tier list, at least less than, like, the scope that everyone has in their mind. Yeah, unless you're Panda Cat. Maybe Zapman following up on that one. Wide variety that we've seen. We've seen 2 games of Hachiman. We had a Geb, we had an Artemis. We've now had On her and Hu Yi. A lot of hunters showing up in these games. The Osiris rounds it out for the Kings. How do you like that one? That one's, I would argue, variety special.
Yeah, it's a very annoying composition here that the Kings have. I mean, Gilgamesh is going to W key, Osiris is going to W key, and Ymir is going to put up a wall to make sure that those W keys make contact with the Leviathans. I like their draft a lot, the Kings, that is. They've got good objective control, they've got decent scaling into the late game, they've got great AoE damage from this Merlin, so if there is decent space creation, as there should be with the Gilgamesh and Osiris on your squad, I think that there's going to be a lot of tools that this Merlin can work with pretty easily, whereas the dive on the Leviathans is strong, maybe not a consistent enough damage from the divers themselves to put enough threat onto this Merlin that can dissuade these engagements. Instead, it's going to be Odin setting up with the cage, saying, all right, guys, catch up. Please, Baba Yaga, I need your damage right now. If it doesn't come through off the cage, well, that kind of makes their team fight fall apart. But they still do have the fallback tool of Stygian Torment to burn beads, and then Ragnarok just to set up.
Well, it's going to be a fun one to watch. Of course, Game 3s always keep things a little bit spicy. But, guys, they're going to be remaking the lobby as of right now. So while these guys get set up and we sit through that spectator delay, hopefully you sit tight, grab yourselves a drink, grab yourselves a snack. You got a couple of minutes. We'll be right back with game number 3. Oh, it's a fun, wild day. I hope you enjoyed that break as much as we did, because that was an exciting one for me. Of course, more exciting is game number 3, Leviathans going up against the Kings. The drafts on either side. Myth, though, who's winning?
Wow. That is the one question you're not allowed to toss my way.
Hey, Myth.
I've got a
Let me rephrase
crippling gambling problem. Don't do this to me.
Who do you think would win? No money bets allowed, just in your humble opinion.
All right. At Twitch chat, I'm going to go ahead and bet you guys exactly 10 internet cool points that it's likely going to be the Leviathans that win this one, man. I mean, Baba Yaga, I'm just such a Baba Yaga enthusiast, and they've built such a good draft around her that it's going to be so hard, in my eyes, for the Kings to close gap onto her.
Now, am I right that 10 internet cool points translates to, like...
10 Reddit upvotes.
I was going to say, like, 10 followers on Twitter, so everyone has to flood you with unfollow?
No, but...
that one shot... What you hear is genuine distress. Mifflin really doesn't want that to happen.
There are 3 things in this world that I care about. The SMITE Pro League, my dog, and my Twitter follower count. I'm a vain person. Don't do it to me, Chad.
That is a list. So, look, I'm sorry, we're losing it as we go forward.
Focus up. Free your mind.
This is the first set, dude. We're doing this. That's where we're going. Look, they remade it. This is the funny part. It has just been so long since Hardcore has had to make the lobby that I think that there were some goofed up stats. I'm not making that up. That's what I was told, was that they had to remake it because some of the, like, well, I don't know what it was. If it was gold count or well, it can't be picks and bans. He obviously got the draft conquest right. Yeah, where it was that came through. It was spectator settings, of course, but it was a little bit of a fluff up. It's been a little while for him, but luckily they've got that under their belt. Mifflin, you've said the Leviathans have the win potentially under their belt. I'm going to ask you now, was that a genuine thing, or was that just some fun?
No, I legitimately do really like their draft here. I think that they've got good beads burning tools. The peel potential's there for Baba Yaga. We know the damage output that god can have, and I've got faith in Shinto to perform.
That's the most serious thing he said in like 5 minutes. I'm going to take it. That's going to be exactly what it is. Game number 3. Let's get into it.
It's been absolutely unbearable here on the break. Not only do we want to get into Game 3, but Mifflin has watched like 3 episodes of Letterkenny and is not letting us forget about it. Make sure to watch that show. By the way, Dolson, Aggro, and Doug bringing you game number 3 between the Leviathans and the Camelot Kings.
You know what's crazy is that I think he was very serious about the 3 things he cares about. He talks to you about how many followers you've gained all the time. And you're beating him, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well then that's easy for you. Seems
but
like
I have no shame, you know.
Right, of course. I mean, you're throwing out whatever you need to throw out in order to gain the followers. Mifflin, look, all he has to do, he has a dog.
Yeah.
Post it.
Yeah. 100%.
People are going to follow you for that type of content. Why do you think I have followers? Because I've got a great dog.
That's right. That's all it is, right? That's all it is for any of us.
That's all it is.
Look, this is an important one between the Leviathans and the Camelot Kings. They're tied as far as standings goes. You jump up into that second place spot with a win here in this one. And now we've seen, it wasn't quite the same performance reversed on the Leviathans there in Game 2, but we've seen now 2 games, 1 apiece, where it felt like either team controlled the state of the game that they had personally won. Some more shifts happening here, though. Notably, Shinto still on this Baba Yaga is not a shift. So Shinto will get another crack at this Baba Yaga here. Here's a bit of a different look, though. Panatom with some early damage on a twig here in the mid lane, but as we so often see, just a little bit of poke, and somehow it always feels like both junglers end up half HP when the level 2 mid lane meeting does happen here. But look at Genetics and look at Netroid. They've got to leave.
Rongu and Zap really getting lane dominance in this lane, thanks in most part to that Cerberus damage I would expect. Is now both junglers, you said both were half HP. I was going to say that only Twig had lost the beads, but that is no longer the case, as Panatom has now lost his as well. Shinto did indeed. So you've got a lot of fireworks in the mid lane, but the way that these 2 teams took the first 2 games in terms of pacing, I'd be kind of surprised if either jungler or Shinto truthfully got punished for not having beads. Seems like they're a little bit more interested in the mid-game power spikes than the early game aggression.
Well, one of the questions that the desk had was maybe there's a world where this Odin goes support and Cerberus still goes to the solo lane, as we saw in game number 2. I figured, though, with the way Odin's been playing, particularly Odin solo, because I don't know the last time we've seen Odin support, figured this would be the way things shake out. This is going to be an interesting look for Yarkor. You know, he's been in Hunter for really this entire year, now back in solo. It seems like he's not skipping a beat on that one. But this is a pick that feels like has that potential, right? It's converting that potential into actual in-game impact. And so this is a big one for Yarkor.
Yeah, I'm just so surprised the Leviathans first picked it. They banned the Fafnir in order to first pick the Odin. I was surprised.
Panatom could follow up with a stun, and stun he does. Now Variety brutalized on down, and that is just so simple for the Leviathans. And it feels like Variety didn't necessarily do anything wrong. He's just chilling in the wave and farming. It's just the stun and then the immediate restun by Panatom was enough CC.
Got to know that that's the time where you get ganked. So your blue buff's coming up, the right side buffs are all respawning. You've got to know that that is one of the easiest ways to gank you is that I'm already here. I might as well do what I can. And if you die, you die. Great. And if not, I don't lose a whole lot because I'm where I want to be on the map. Definitely a bit of a slip of the understanding of where the jungler, your jungle tracking kind of slipped down a little bit there for Variety. It ends up in an easy first blood for Panatom, which is big. You want to see this Fenrir get ahead. It's really easy to control the pace of the game when you're ahead on a god like this that has mobility and damage and CC all built into one. And Odin as well gets a little bit of a lead, which, as I said, a little surprised to see the Leviathans prioritize it so heavily. Ban away the Fafnir from themselves, where I think Rongyu could have really first picked that. But they still get Rongyu on a pick that I like in the Cerberus. Much more initiative in his hands, much more capability to be aggressive in comparison to that gap.
It is pretty interesting, though. Almost the early conversation in Game 2 that I brought up about this is going to be a real mental gymnastics thing for me to deal with because it was the Leviathans in Game 2 that had all 5 sets of beads.
Yeah.
It was a Cerberus for the Kings and a Fenrir for the Kings and a solo and a support that had, an instance of single target stun with the hammer. And now you've got a solo laner with a single instance stun with the spear from Yarkor. You've got a Cerberus still for the Leviathans, and you've got a Fenrir out of the jungle, and 5 sets of beads for the Camelot Kings. I wonder if things might end up playing out pretty similar to how they did in Game 2.
It was hard to get past that front line, for sure. That's certainly a possibility. But I'm interested that the Leviathans are really focusing out Variety because now he's stuck underneath his tower, no blue buff available. Oof. He's not a factor in this skirmish. It's really Captain Twig versus Panatom and Yarkor on this blue buff, and can't imagine he's winning that.
Feels like pretty easy decision-making for Panatom. We'll return right back onto the blue buff. Panatom does take some damage from Twig. Rongyu is here as well. This is a big old journey for the Leviathan support who has reached level 5.
On tour.
And so Stygian Torment and with the Blink for Rongyu. So we weren't thrilled with Blinkless Geb there in Game 2. Now you've got Blink, you've got big circular ult setup similar to the Geb, so I think this is a big bounce back chance for Rongyu on a playmaking pick.
Look, I think that the whole no blink on the Geb last game, for me it was summed up during one of the replays where the Kings are securing the second fire giant of the game, and Twig is not worried about Rongyu standing right in front of him. He's hitting the Harpy that's right next to him in order to stack up his runes because he knows that there's no threat of Rongyu blinking in and disrupting his backline, and he doesn't have to worry about keeping him in combat. It's just a lot easier to play as a backliner when you're not getting blinked on. That is just it's so much easier. So now when you've got to concern yourself with that, it changes how you have to position and how you have to play.
I think it's just an immediate, it feels like what would be an immediate upgrade for Rongyu in playing the way that we know that he likes to play here. And so this is what we've come to expect, at least in games 1 and 2 between these two teams, where Variety, a bit overextended in the early game, was really the only early impact we saw. But things tend to slow down then from that point on. Captain Twig is going to be back on the Gilgamesh here in this game. Gilgamesh continues his journey through this phase of the SPL. Zapman a chance to have maybe get caught out here, as Genetics will find the freeze. Beads on the other end. There still's got to be a wall somewhere here, you imagine, but there's a leap as well, and so Genetics did what he came to do, burn the beads off Zapman.
Happy with that. Good positioning, understanding of his ward timings. He's able to sneak around nicely.
2v2, it's Panatom. Chunky damage there from Captain Twig. The leap away from Panatom will be enough. Rongyu's rotating in as well, but it looks like Twig and Variety are going to be plenty healthy enough to survive this one. I'm not sure there's enough damage between these two to even to melt on through those health bars, but a chance to steal away this blue buff and does end up getting dropped down by Rongyu, and Variety has no mana. He really wanted that one.
Can't do anything about it.
Is that
Twig
3 in a
also
row?
out of mana. Yes, it is, but... Or no, 2 in a row, excuse me, because Twig got the one before.
The one before it, okay.
But they killed Variety on that one. So
Right.
3 successful visits to this right-hand side in a row, and this time they don't even get punished for it. Panatom loses the beads, but that's really about it. Variety has really been kept down intentionally, it seems like, so far in this game. But I don't know how much it really matters if he's going for this tanky sovereignty Osiris. I mean, he's not going to get solo kills in this lane up against Yarkor, who's this far ahead. Instead, he's really playing for the team fights, and you can tell just by his itemization.
Panatom now on this early game pick has already made waves and trying to keep Variety behind. Strategy that seems to have worked out so far. It's 1 level difference over there in the solo lane. In that same time frame, though, looks like both hunters have been left alone as both supports start to rotate on out of that lane. There's always the potential for 1v1, isn't there, when there's an on-her in that lane.
And a Ho-Yi.
And a Ho-Yi. So part of me wants to see some fireworks, but with some of the pacing of this game, I'm not sure we'll see him. Wall from Genetics will not slow down. Panatom and the drop kick from Captain Twig, not enough either. Now it's the Ragnarok right back in. Goodbye, Captain Twig. Panatom's taking chunky damage, though, from the rest of the Camelot Kings that are in there on the back line, and it's Yarkor getting burned away, but Shinto looking to do some more of the same variety with Lord of the Afterlife. Tries to close the gap in the wall. Nearly perfect, but not perfect enough.
Odin still falls, and Shinto has to jump away. No mana. And look at this. The Hunters have joined the fray. Both Zapman and Netriot are here, but that's it. It's solo laner for jungler. In a great wall from Genetics, nearly blocked off Yarkor. Still was able to slow him down enough. Yarkor just not quite tanky enough at this point in the game to withstand the Merlin damage. Level 10 for big man Tings already. But a great play from Panatom, and really just a misuse of the beads there by Twig. You got to make them bite you. I mean, you don't want to take the damage. You don't want to get repositioned for that half a second, but it's a heck of a lot better than beadsing way too early, getting no value from it, and then getting picked up and killed guaranteed. Definitely a misuse of that relic there from the jungler.
What do you know, we've had so much conversation around, this Baba Yaga and scale potential, and I'll hold that thought, see what happens to Netriot here. He's on the wrong side of this lane. That means there's a couple leaps ready to chase him on down. Brutalize nearly gets it there. It's a good old-fashioned auto attack on the other end. They'll get Panatom back on the board here, 2-0-1. That's what you expect from this Fenrir, earlier on in the game.
Yep, being active early. And Zapman, speaking of actives, so known for not using them, decides that he's going to show his new teammates that he can definitely use the beads. Beads is a slow and doesn't do anything afterwards. But hey,
he used them.
He used them. And they're on cooldown now, which is usually not a good thing. But sometimes it needs to be celebrated, like in this instance.
Well, we've got 125 seconds to see if it's a bad thing, if the Camelot Kings can capitalize on that. Just prior to that happening, I was kind of curious. We've talked plenty about Baba Yaga, no boots. Not horrible in the early game, but definitely better in the late game. Might not get another chance to talk about this if Rongyu does this, and it's a blink on in to cut off Captain Twig, who has to use the ultimate. Looks like Twig will be able to leap away here, and then the solo laners will wail on one another. I'm just going to ask, what's the power curve of a Merlin look like kind of compared to this Baba Yaga? Definitely needs some itemization to start feeling comfortable.
Yeah, spikes a little bit earlier than the Baba, I would say, but still has good late game potential as Variety once again getting dove. He's used the beads. Rongyu has the ultimate. Should be pretty simple from here.
Rongyu grabs.
Oh, no, not like
Yarkor
this.
with the up down doesn't have the damage. Luckily, Panatom is there as a bit of an insurance policy. And so the Leviathans get away with one, but I'm not sure Shinto's going to be able to do the same. It's a 3-man rotation to the right, and then a 3-man collapse on mid. Variety down once more. Shinto falls for the first time.
All right, as we all know, Variety died because of good overlapping of ultimates, and no one missed anything that made us feel really sad on the inside watching a bird bomb get whiffed.
Something about you and me and solo lane tier 1 tower dives going wrong.
Yeah, that's true. No one let Benenu know we were talking about.
No.
He doesn't need to know. But hey, you get Shinto on the back end, you get his Aegis and his ultimate as well. Variety ends up falling again, but he's the Osiris. He's gonna Osiris people later on, basically no matter what. Osiris is not the early game only character of the past. He really does scale pretty well into the late game. He's difficult to teamfight against later. And I also really like him up against the Baba Yaga because whenever she's got all this mobility in terms of you can't lock her down during that ultimate. It's long duration CC immunity. But Osiris doesn't care so much about that. He just wants to tether her as she goes into that, and that reduces her damage that she's doing to the whole team. So you're feeling really good about your option there. If he can just get on top of her and tether her as she ultimates,
yep,
great. she's doing no damage. And so now that ultimate becomes a whole lot less threatening. It doesn't matter if Variety's down a level when that situation happens.
Sure.
He's going to be valuable in that instance anyways.
Still a slight lead for Yarkor over there in that lane, 0-1-3 on the Odin up to this point. Really, all of that lead, kill-wise, has culminated for Panatom on this this early active pick. Still a lead, though, for the Leviathans as a team, 1.5K in both experience and gold. But all that being said, all this time that Panatom has spent on the right, despite Twig and Variety losing some of that XP, it appears that Twig has still done a good job of farming up, keeping that XP close.
Yeah, I mean, Twig down about 600 gold, I think, but
30 a minute.
Overall, not in a horrible position. Yeah, about 600 gold or so in the lead for Panatom. Twig's been able to stay pretty relevant, so not a bad position for him to be in.
We've seen this story before. Netroid leaps away, uses the Desert Fury, has beads on the other side as well, and uses both. And an impale secures his safety, and so intriguing. Now we've seen a couple instances of one successful, one unsuccessful now, trying to keep Netroid behind. Maybe that's just going to give Zapman that little uptick of a lead that we see there on left.
Really good impale from Netroid. Used everything when he needed to. Really good way to escape that. That's just excellent play. Not a kill, but surviving and making sure that Zap doesn't just get that tier 1 tower for free and a whole bunch of waves and all of a sudden start to snowball the game. As you said, you know, we'll see if that gives Zapman a window to be aggressive, but if Netroid's playing that well defensively, I don't imagine that's going to happen.
Well, no beads and a little bit without the Desert Fury there, so the CC immunity immediately off the table for Netroid. But it's a small window, small target to hit here for Zapman. Bit of a different pivot. Now we've seen this, I think, a couple of times in this set where Ikavel's first item for both of the Hunters followed up by something different. Netroid's gone into Oboe after that. But Aussie's second item here for Zapman, hoping for a little extra sustain in the early build.
Wonder if it's because of the jungler choices on the other side. I mean, you don't really get to Aussie lifesteal through a Brutalize when you're really low, but maybe you could through the Osiris dive or through the Gilgamesh dive. Those are a little bit less burst damage heavy than something like Fenrir. Maybe that's the option here for Zappa, and that's why he's going to it. But I think it's probably that just he wants the lifesteal overall. You're so used to playing with it at this point. That's a big adjustment for Hunter players to make, and Zap was still stacking even as of a couple games ago, so still making the adjustment over to this new, more early game-centric build.
That's right, and look, we're still only so far removed from that big update where there's still some theory crafting happening. It's a 3-man rotation on over to left. Rongyu avoids the freeze here. Desert Fury flies on in, gets a lot of damage onto Rongyu, and Zapman leaps away. 2 ultimates down, Twigs, Netroid's gone, Rongyu, Zapman's also gone. Bead's gone from Zapman. I don't know, difficult to call that one, but at least you get the beads off Zap as well as both ults there on left.
Yeah, I wonder if Zap's dive bomb was still down, and that's why he used the beads, but he used the dive bomb a second later, so ends up being safe enough at the end of the day. But no CC immunity, of course, there for him in the kit. Not having those purification beads up against something like a Ymir, even without Blink, could end up being difficult.
Gold Fury started up now by the Leviathans. The Camelot Kings are aware something's happening here, but Yarkor's going to drop the cage. The Octagon, as Gore wants me to call it, that counts. And enough space created by the front line and the jungler to win the Gold Fury and win a kill on the other end. Netroid had his beads there, chose not to use them. Then down goes the Hunter, and here comes the re-dive from the Leviathans. I'm not sure there's a kill on the other end. They got the Gold Fury, they got the Hunter.
And it's so unfortunate for Netroid, because I was looking at the exact same thing, but his beads came up as he got put down. Yeah, it was literally 2 seconds when he got bit by Panatom, and then died as they came up. So unfortunate timing for him. Great play from Panatom.
That's calculated.
Yeah, calculated. Yeah, he knew down to the very second how long those beads were going to be down, and really made him pay for it.
And so now the Leviathans get this biggest spike that we've seen so far in the game, where it's been kind of a passive 1,500 gold lead. This is really where the Leviathans break things open. They get the Gold Fury, they get the kill, and maybe some gold here. But Genetics and Variety are trying to put up a defense around this tier 1 tower. The Rongyu, Zapman, and Panatom could have enough damage to try to turn this around. There's a Pyromancer on right, and the Camelot Kings were able to secure this one. Rongyu tanking up the tower, and now the fight breaks out on the left here as well. Stygian Torment onto Genetics, who gets pulled right back into the awaiting arms of Zapman. Shards of Ice. That's not going to confirm a kill. There's a kill happening on a Yarkor on the right here as well. Variety looks like he'll be safe, but can't say the same for Panatom. And there's another kill that ends up going down. 3 for 2. Leviathans ahead for the time being.
Zap still here and with Aegis
What happened
and is in plenty of health. He's okay, but it looks like it was a skirmish over the Pyromancer, with the Kings technically won by getting the Pyromancer, but then also kind of lost because they lost their mid laner. Shinto ended up winning that one, but both relics still up for Big Man. Wonder if he was just so low that he knew his relics wouldn't save him in that moment. But you give Shinto an awful lot of free farm by getting the kill onto Big Man, who was worth a lot, putting him on the bench for a while, a couple of waves for Shinto, which add up quickly at this point in the game.
Yep.
And a tier 1 tower. This Baba starting to reach that critical mass.
And there's the tier 1 tower on left and a couple of kills that happened there for the Leviathan. So the Kings are able to get the Pyro and a kill or two in that little engagement, but the Leviathan's definitely feeling more comfortable maybe with how things broke down there. So 18 minutes in, the only big objective left on the map right now is the FG. This is the point now where you're just going to let some of those actives get back off cooldown if you're the Leviathans, and then maybe regroup. It's always interesting, though, speaking of actives, to follow along when there's an Odin in the game.
Yep.
Because you never know where some of the priority falls with the Phantom, and we've had a pretty good conversation around why you don't want it. And Genetics wanted the Phantom here in this one.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, against the Ymir, it's just, you're in so much trouble if you get caged and your ADC isn't hitting it. On her, also not great at blocking down those walls because he has some of the lower base attack speed, but the build will help out.
Wow, Panatom aggressive here. The other side as well as the rest of the Leviathans, but Genetics, he doesn't have a leg to stand on here. The Fire Giant was started up there, and the Leviathan started it up under that condition. You got to imagine there might be one on the back end here and could get secured if Variety also goes down, but Netrioid sends the Desert Fury flying. That might slow down the Leviathan.
Such a difference in the front line in this game for the Kings in comparison to Game 2, where Genetics and Variety in particular were controlling a ton of space. This time, they're the ones getting control.
Wrong blinks to the right here, burning away at Variety. Then the follow-up stun for Panatom is in as well. Captain Twig's got to leave. Zapman leaps on forward, nearly takes some damage from Big Man Tings there, who's still full HP, but Yarkor has got something else in mind. All the movement used away from this Odin. And this is tricky, though, for the Leviathans. Only Shinto's full HP, still an FG stance.
And Genetics is up off the respawn. Wonder what they're going to do. I mean, Zap does have Aussie, so he can lifesteal better than most would be able to at this point in their build.
They're doing it.
But they're letting Shinto be the zone because they're leveraging his health pool more than theirs. But I think they need his DPS on FG.
Shinto has all of his actives, but does not have his ultimate. There's a freeze on through from Genetics. Was the bait and switch there? Yes, it was. Panatom, is he going to survive? No, he's not. Captain Twig has to jump back in. And so now Panatom is down, so is Genetics. But it looks like the Leviathans have had their fill on this one, and the FG will live on.
I mean, it feels really bad for Genetics. He dies, he walks back to FG, instantly dies again. But you trade his life for Panatom. The Leviathans don't extend their lead at all. They don't use the fact that they got 2 for nothing. And you end up stalling out in this game. I think that's a fine play for the Kings. That they don't lose a whole lot on the back of it, and certainly a trade for Genetics, who's level 13, for Panatom, who's level 16 and was 6-1 at the time, is one that's worthwhile for the Kings.
Camelot Kings are able to remain relevant in this game, and that's what's so important. You know, in Game 1, you had these types of swings in the game that the Leviathans brought to the table, and the Camelot Kings didn't quite have the answer. At least in this game, they've been able to put up a fight and keep the Fire Giant left on the map. Oni Fury is going to get looked at here by the Leviathans. This is always risky because this can happen. The Camelot Kings are starting up the FG. There is a ward here, and that means the Leviathans drop the Fury, start to rotate here towards the right, and the Fire Giant has been dropped over there as well. But look at the jump in. It's onto Yarkor, who doesn't take nearly enough damage here. Captain Twig Ragnarok's back into the awaiting arms of Zapman, and the first kill is fallen.
Variety's on top of Zap, but Shinto's there to peel for him. And look at the work that the front line is doing right now for the Leviathans. Netrioid already down.
The flying elbows all just jumping in on the Camelot Kings, and Netrioid is the second kill in this fight. Now Genetics is going to get run down as well. Another leap is on in. That would have been a sweet ricochet from Zapman, just shy from connecting for the kill, and Yarkor should be here to get one. If nothing else, Genetics is out of the fight. Panatom ends up getting the kill into Genetics, so it's Big Man Ting's Variety, the last 2 alive. You got to imagine this is an FG pull.
And you know, I kept thinking all this prioritization onto the Osiris. Who cares? He's gonna Osiris people late game, but he's not. They just can't withstand the damage. I mean, level 20 for both Shinto and Zapman. They are doing such a good job of playing with each other. Remember, this is their first SPL set together as a backline, and I've loved their spacing. That's that was perfect for those of you who are trying to kind of join into the SCC or anything like that. You want to know how you play with your mid laner as an ADC, or how as a mid laner you play with your ADC. Split off in the team fight, you pull them away, you split up so that you can both DPS, but they can't DPS you both at the same time, and that was perfect from the Leviathans backline. But for me, so far in this set, it's just been frontline diff. Which frontline is able to create more space and stay more safe and end up handling the backline better, and it has not been close, really, in any of the games. In Game 1, it was very clearly the Leviathans frontline was doing more work. Game 2 was very clear that the Kings were doing more work with their front line. And now, Yarkor, Panatom, Rongyu, a combined 8, 2, and a lot, because I'm not doing that math. The Kings front line, not looking quite as good. Thanks, Dave. 8, 2, and 23.
I said that so confidently.
Is it wrong?
No, I think it is. I mean, 10, 5,
okay, yeah,
15,
it's 23.
plus 8,
okay,
23.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. I thought you just threw out a number and let me say it. What if you would have been like, yeah, 43, and I'm like, yeah, 8, 2, and 43, and then I would have looked so dumb. Thank goodness you're too wholesome to do that to.
There's something so threatening and also satisfying to watch. The triple jump, double blink, like in those engagements, Yarkor jumps in, then a Panatom immediately jumps. Like it's so difficult to position around that. It feels like for the Camelot Kings, they're gonna have to do it here as the left side Phoenix gets started on up. Maybe not, actually. I don't think it's taken a single tick of damage here just yet.
Draugr buff is active here for the Kings, so extra defense is for this Phoenix.
Important. Haven't seen a whole lot of that, but this time it could make a difference. Captain Twig uses his ultimate here as the chase begins. Panatom low. Yarkor has to leap out as well. For the time being, maybe the Camelot Kings have done enough.
I mean, 3 ultimates down. Phoenix still awfully healthy. Leviathans limp away. They still have 2 ultimates available, including the blink ults from Yarkor and Rongyu, but this is probably the safer call. There's still a lot of gold on the map here for the Leviathans to take. 3K between these 2 towers for the team in total, so they'll get these. But with that, I mean, they're not going to have many waves in order to go back to that left Phoenix or really go to any Phoenix if they want to keep it going.
Right side tier 2. That's now the target for the Atlantis Leviathans. The wall will go up here from Genetics. Genetics has had those walls that have made some differences at points in this game. But Aggro, maybe there's a feeling, and we'll see if the Kings choose to really defend this tier 2 tower, maybe there's a feeling that the blinkless Ymir is falling prey to some more things that the blinkless Geb did in Game 2.
Big man just had to use the beads. A great initiation by Rongyu, and it only cost him a stun and his ultimate to get big man's beads, and no Geb this time around, so we'll see how he does.
Right side Phoenix might be a little bit better for the Leviathans. Jump on in, and goodbye Genetics, and the Leviathans have found the opening kill. Variety has a few tethered in there. Yarkor has dropped the Octagon, but the right side Phoenix still stands strong. You need a little bit more damage here if you're the Leviathans, but don't quite have the health bars or the engage to get it done. Maybe you wait another wave.
Jump in from Panatom, nearly got a little bit more, but now you got 3 sets of beads down among 2 living in particular on the King's side.
Everyone from the Kings that's alive has their ultimate. First one gets used here, and it's Captain Twig, and then the leaps away this time from the Leviathans are going to slow this down even further. Shinto sends some damage flying Netrioid's way, courtesy of the house this time around, but the Camelot Kings have stayed alive, and that's the most important thing here. And similar to what we've seen in other games, Fire Giant dying off here in 30 seconds, the buff will, and all 3 Phoenixes still alive. The Camelot Kings probably happy with the way that Fire Giant defense ended up. You lose a lot of gold, a lot of towers, but at least your Phoenixes are alive.
Dave, you know what I think made the difference there? Draugr buff. I think that's what keeps up that right side Phoenix. Meaningful mechanics, baby! We got him here in Season 8. That extra defense ends up playing a big part because this Kings draft, despite being very far behind right now, is difficult to siege against. Between the Ymir walls, just blocking autos and forcing the ADC to either get out of position or to deal their damage to the Phoenix as is their job, or just denying them that damage for a long period of time. The Merlin, obviously great on the defense. He has been since release. You've got Gilgamesh that creates a big zone that is difficult to fight into. Osiris tether, you're grouped up, you're getting multi-tethered. On her pillar, they all have good tools on this defensive siege. So it doesn't surprise me too much the Leviathans are finding some resistance at that part of the game. It's just a matter of can they actually get off the defense and onto the offensive point. And for that to happen, the Kings are going to have to really find a way to kill this front line for the Leviathans.
Fire Giant's going to be up here in under a minute. And the most dire active circumstances go to Zapman right now, who's without beads for a minute, without Aegis. for just under a minute and a half. Literally everyone else in the game have got everything outside of Captain Twig, who's going to get his in the next 30 seconds or so. And then 10 seconds on the beads here for Big Man Ting. So the Fire Giant will be back before beads and Aegis are close to being back here for Zapman. So it's really about positioning and maybe delaying things just a little bit. But if the Camelot Kings are privy to that, could be a big advantage.
Good ward coverage here, though, from the Leviathans. And the Kings are going to have to walk into Baba Yaga damage. And this is where Baba is really hard to play against because her damage comes pretty quickly between the wild magic and the potions. It's all over the wall, and it's hard to dodge because you don't know exactly where it's coming from a lot of the time, especially for that wild magic. So this is where Shinto can really make a big difference.
Zapman 20 seconds on the beads, 30 seconds on the Aegis as Zapman Relic Watch continues here in game number 3 of Leviathans for the Kings. At this point, feels like they'll buy enough time. So we're going to go back into this next fight. Fully stocked up on ultimates, fully stocked up on actives. The Leviathans find themselves 10,000 gold in the lead. XP starting to mean less, though, Aggro.
Yeah.
The starter item upgrades for everyone are eligible outside of Genetics, who's still level 16 here. And so waiting for that benevolence upgrade to reach its way in. So XP less important, gold still plays a factor.
I love benevolence. I can't even do what you did. I was trying to make fun of you
What
for
did
the
I
record,
say,
and now I
benevolence?
messed up, and now I'm going to get made fun of. I hate it here.
Did I say benevolence?
Yeah, I think it was a benevolence.
Benevolence.
I don't even know what you did. That's harder to say than benevolence for sure. Impressive work by you, Dave. You never.
I tried to do it.
Yeah, you never seem to disappoint. That's for sure. I think that the Kings draft from this position. We talked about how good they are on the defense, but you look at how the Leviathans are controlling space themselves with Stygian Torment, Cage from Odin, jump stuns from Panatom, Zapman's ultimate, Shinto's ultimate. The Kings can't really death ball through the Leviathans. Their composition is too good at defending against that. So the Kings have got to find a way to spread out this attack and spread out their backline, not let them get hit by this AoE, and in particular the front line as well.
Not very spread right now. Genetics will use the wall. That'll help keep his front line alive. Fire Giant has not been started up here. Leviathans pretty openly swinging for a fight. Ward coverage, as you mentioned earlier on, still important, and the Camelot Kings have enough kind of shallow, deep in their own jungle, but shallow on the Leviathan side of the jungle, right around this Fire Giant pit's what I'm trying to say. So they can tell where the Leviathans are standing, and they know the Leviathans haven't started up the FG just yet. Zapman pulls back and does start up the FG with the help of Wrong You this time. Panatom still dancing around up front. We're about to hit 30 minutes in the game, so Enhanced Fire Giant will be here by the time this one gets taken down. And that one's difficult to fight back up against. Yarkor takes the stun here. Captain Twig lurking over the wall as well, but now Panatom calls him on. It's the double jump on in, but Twig will leap away to safety. Has FG been reset? Yes, it has.
Netroid still has to use the beats, though. Panatom gets value out of that ultimate after all. Was trying to call the bluff again.
Oh, Zapman is low here. So is Shinto. The carries for the Leviathans. They've got to leave, and Variety's got something else in mind. Wrong You desperately peeling out for his mid laner here, but look at the burst damage as Panatom turns the corner. Bye-bye, Variety, and now the re-engage is in for the Leviathans.
Big ult from Wrong You gets Netroid sent back, but he still has the jump, but he's got to contend with Shinto's ultimate. And in fact, I think Fire just killed Shinto.
Must have been Fire Giant because Netroid's all the way over here. Now Big Man Tings has got a kill on the Panatom as well. Zapman goes low, uses the Aegis, leaps away.
Whoa.
Oh, the wall from Genetics locks him in. Netroid's got the double kill. The turnaround is in, and the Camelot Kings are up front.
So it's a bit of a miscommunication and a misplay there from the Leviathans, as now it's Yarkor, who was just trying to clear out this wave. Mantle Stun bought him his life here because if Tings had been able to full channel that flamethrower, I don't think Yarkor lives. But the Leviathans do a good job. They bait the Kings in to narrow corridors, and they use that space control we were just talking about. Odin Cage, Ho Yi ult. They're able to cut off a large portion of the area, so it's only Variety who gets in. And when it's only one who gets in on a dive, that's easy to peel and turn and kill. And that's exactly what they do. But then the Leviathans get a little bit too aggressive going forward. Shinto was so low. I think he must have stepped into the fire ring and just had that kill him, because I don't know what else could have done it that would have given credit over to Netroid. And as soon as you lose Shinto's DPS, Zapman just gets corralled, CC'd a little bit too easily. The Kings are able to counterpunch really effectively. Leviathans, it's hard to do in the moment whenever you get a kill and you still have ultimates available. You know, Shinto still had ult, still had Aegis, he still had options. Zapman still fairly healthy. but you gotta sometimes take that win and just get that reset off of it. You know, just back up, let's dominate our ward vision again, and let's try it all over again. Also interesting to note here, Dave, before this Primal Fury goes down, or as it goes down, is that Leviathan should be able to get Draugr as well, and we'll see if that buff will do as much work for the Order side as it did for the Chaos side.
A little bit of timing here. Draugr deserves its day in the sun. Now the Camelot Kings with Enhanced Fire Giant, as we mentioned, on all 5 members. Tier 1, quick work. Tier 2, quick work there as well. The good news for the Leviathans is all 6 towers were still standing on their side of the map by the time that FG went down. So there's still a lot for the Camelot Kings to work through. 2 minutes and 45 seconds left on this buff. So it's really up to the Kings here. Do we bother taking all of the towers, opening up the Phoenixes, or do we regroup and maybe just try to siege once the Leviathans are back?
I would not, but your most important wave that you want is this duo side wave. It's furthest from the Fire Giant, and they haven't gotten it. So now, yeah, I don't like this call at all from the Kings. I mean, they're probably worried about Twig's beads being down and Netrioid's Aegis, but EFG is the game ender. I mean,
right.
We talk about Fire Giants. In particular, I like to talk about how early game, you don't win off the first Fire Giant. It's really there to ensure that you can get enough of a lead that you guarantee the next Fire Giant, so that you can end with that one. That is not the case with Enhanced Fire Giant. Once it becomes enhanced post 30 minutes, I don't care if that's your first objective you've gotten all game. You've got
which it is.
Which it is, legitimately. You've got to try and use that to end the game. I don't like giving yourself a limited amount of time on this left-hand side in order to try and knock down this left side Phoenix. And you've given plenty of time for the Leviathans to go push your solo side wave, so you don't even have 3 waves crashing. You've only got 2. I would have liked to see the Kings be a little bit more all in. Who cares if the Titan's a little bit tankier if you just wipe them with your EFG?
Map state outside of waves now equal. All 3 Phoenixes exposed on both sides of the map. So the Camelot Kings with 1 minute and 15 seconds left on this Enhanced Fire Giant buff now make their way to the left side Phoenix here, and it's melting quickly despite there being a Draugr buff on. And this is, I guess, why we were so surprised. They made such quick work of that. Could have done it a minute or 2 ago, but maybe ensuring an easier finish.
And that's EFG. The difference between Enhanced Fire Giant versus regular Fire Giant is really night and day. And the tools that these compositions have on the defense. Leviathan's much better on offense in comparison to the Kings, where the Kings were much better on defense. You're seeing that here.
That said, Camelot Kings still get the Phoenix, still have a chance for another Phoenix. Just a little bit less time on the buff, but here comes the leap from the Leviathans. Yarkor left alone in the back line. The cage got no one except for maybe Captain Twig, but Yarkor will survive.
Big
Can you
man's
say
in.
the same for Panatom? Oh, Zapman gets the kill from range, and Panatom survives. Down goes Twig as well, and it's the siege gone wrong as the Leviathans get 2.
And Shinto still has plenty of damage in the pocket, literally, with the potion, but with all these walls and the pillars from the Kings, can't imagine this siege is going to continue, or the chase, I should say, is going to continue for the Leviathans. But what can you get if you're the Leviathans? Enhanced FG is down, no Oni Fury to get, you've got Fire Waves on this left-hand side to grab, and Shinto is just getting poked by this Sundering Axe Osiris now in the late game. I don't think the Leviathans have bought themselves anything but time, because I don't think they're going to get anything offensively here.
Feels like, despite the gold charts up top telling you 4K, it feels like the game is dead even at this point. And the kills, the way they're swinging, you know, Leviathans have the 10-kill lead. It was the fantastic 1 skirmish around the Enhanced Fire Giant that got the Camelot Kings right back in. The big swing now is this left side Phoenix being down, and when that next FG respawns in under a minute, call it 15-20 seconds here, that's something the Leviathans are going to have to be wary of. So Zapman's able to push that side of the map out, at least buying some time. But if the Camelot Kings were able to delay things aggro, admittedly for a little while, that fire wave could make some issues.
Hey, the Kings got nothing but time right now. No reason to worry about pulling it right away.
And their actives are
And your
worse.
actives, you're right. If it's really the Leviathans, I wouldn't mind them just pulling this right away to try and force the Kings to come in and fight them while their actives are still down. How good are you at keeping track of upgraded beats timers versus regular beats timers? This is the question now for the Leviathans.
Enhanced Fire Giant once again springs forth from the earth as Pyromancer gets taken down by the Leviathans. Fire Wave still making its way down the left, and that's why the Leviathan's starting to push it a little bit faster. Variety survives, but he can't fight here. It's an effective 4v5 for the
Twig
Leviathans.
traps.
Captain Twig caught into the cage, but Captain Twig will also survive, but he's also got to leave. Panatom chasing him on in, gets him in the Ragnarok, but the leaping range damage not there with the Camelot Kings full-on retreat.
And again, this is exactly what the Kings want. Now their beads were up, now they're back down, but these fire waves are coming in on the left-hand side. Leviathans don't get this for free. Zap still has his relics.
Stays alive this time, but the Camelot Kings, the
Nice
tug
wall.
of war, the good wall from Genetics will force the leaps away from the Leviathans. The back and forth of this team fighting is almost too much to follow, but what a fun matchup these two teams have put on here. The Fire Giant is still up, but somebody's got to go back. And for right now, it's Rongyu. That's going to give the Camelot Kings an effective 4v5 around this FG.
But they know that Rongyu can't push this wave, and he can't, and he's not. He's not going to stick around and do nothing on that left side, which is smart. But what is the call here from the Leviathans? Are we losing left side Phoenix to keep EFG up?
They might, and that might be the call right now because Rongyu has joined the right side fight. Netroid, he gets Ragnaroked and caged in, and then Zapman is there to put him down finally, but Zapman left on in the backline. It looks like Variety will get this kill, so both hunters are dead. Panatom jumps back to the backline here. It's a 1-for-1 trade as we stand, but Rongyu's got a little bit more health, burning away on Variety.
Jump in from Twig. Rongyu gets CC'd, but still not enough in order to knock him down. ADC for ADC is really not too bad. Panatom, yeah, gotta leave the Titan. I don't think so. I think that Phoenix is dead.
Phoenix
Big
dies
mistake.
yet again. Genetics throws up the wall. Look at Rongyu though. He's locked into place, and it's another impactful wall from Genetics. His big man Tings will notch another kill here into this game. Yarkor running away desperately. Genetics just a few seconds away from that lockdown cooldown. Looks like the Camelot Kings will get one more. Zapman still 25 seconds away. Netrioid still down for a little while as well.
Whoa!
This is always an interesting call. Yarkor, where did he come from? He jumps back in with the rest of the Camelot Kings, uses the cage there as well, and there's a double stun from Panatom on the re-engage.
But another good wall stops the damage from coming in, and don't have enough there for the Leviathans. And Yarkor's blink in only gets the Aegis, it looks like to me, from Big Man Ting. Still not a bad situation to be in. You've got a lower cooldown on the blink, of course, a low cooldown ultimate in that cage.
Wow.
But this Titan is starting to get annoyed, I imagine, with all these fire waves coming up the left-hand side. Can someone push it out for the Leviathans?
Is there ever a world where you ignore Enhanced Fire Giant, just group as 5 and walk into the half HP Titan if you're the Camelot Kings?
No, because of the composition the Leviathans have. If the Leviathans had a different comp that wasn't so good at doing AoE, that you could just death ball in, if they were more single target focused, I think that would be a good call. But as it stands, you've got to worry, you've got so much AoE to contend with that you can't do it. You would just get eviscerated.
There is a bit of a call here from the Camelot Kings as both Big Man Tings and Panatom are alone on the left-hand side here. Rongyu is going to walk forward. He's going to meet face with 2 of the Camelot Kings players here. So this has been sniffed out, but there's still a fire wave to deal with. That means the Camelot Kings have to play a little bit safer here on the right side by this Enhanced Fire Giant. Variety's going to take a little bit of damage. Genetics has been on point with these walls here as of late. Yarkor jumps on in, uses some of that gap close, but an impale from Netroid keeps him at bay.
The thing that I'm noticing is that they don't seem to have that phantom cooldown.
Fire wave, oh my.
Oh yeah, they've got
That is
2
big.
to worry about. They can't stick around.
There's 2 big fire waves pouring into the base of the Leviathans. Can the Camelot Kings just delay the backs here? The Leviathans, they've got to get back to base and deal with some of the waves that have found their way in. It's only 2 waves that'll make its way onto the Titan, but the rest of the Camelot Kings, they're sensing blood in the water. Shinto's been left out to dry, and Big Man Tings burns them down. The fire minions work into the Titan, and it's almost a sure thing at this point on the back end of a double kill and some macro play from the Camelot Kings. The Kings will take it in 3.
Man, what a fun game that gets ended by the fun police that are minions, man. You gotta clear them to get your gold and your experience. You gotta kill them to make sure you don't lose the game, and the Leviathans forgot about that one a little bit. But like you said, good map play there from the Kings. Dave, you did a good job, buddy. It's going to be okay.
So we're ramping up.
I know. It's going to be such a sick fight. I know. But look, the Leviathans, I mean, they just make a couple big mistakes down the stretch that really ends up happening there. Panatom clearing waves on the Titan that you know is not going to kill the Titan instead of going to that left side and defending that Phoenix. That's really the game-ending play, which is a shame because Panatom played so well in so many of those team fights. I thought that he was really doing a vast majority of the work. Ends up making one mistake, and that one's costly.
Hey, what a difference a little bit of health on the Phoenix makes there towards the end. It goes down, fire minions end up making the difference. I do think it's worth saying the Leviathans lose, but this was a roster we wondered how much time. There's a little shifting happening.
Day one.
Day one, they look good. They look competitive. The Camelot Kings, though, they're the ones who beat that good-looking competitive team, find themselves in sole possession of second place here in Phase 2.
We're a good-looking competitive team.
That was like a clip from Worlds where they say, like, something good to look at, and both of us point at one another. God,
That's right.
I
We're
love
right there
that.
with
This
it.
good-looking team is going to go look at one another while we take a break, and the desk will break it down after that.
Maybe they can make it work, though now Aurora has found himself in a bad spot. Kings has the ult, he's walled off perfectly by Genetics. Who needs good ping when you got mechanics like that between Kings and Genetics?
Well, welcome back, everyone. Victory is here for the Kings. Reign supreme, the crown's on top. Of course, it wasn't maybe the way they envisioned it happening, but it's still a victory, and a victory is a victory nonetheless, Mifflin. I give that one credit to the minions. It was me and J-Mac were talking about it. There was maybe a sickle, maybe a flail, maybe one tick of some ice onto that Titan, if even. No, I saw the sickle miss. So I'm saying that's a Winions win.
Oh, you're putting it down on the sheet as
I'm
a
putting
Winions
it down
game.
I'm putting it down on the sheet as a Winions game.
Yeah, I think
5.
you should. The casters summed it up pretty perfectly. That was a sick game that got ruined by some minions.
I got so enveloped in the Minions part, I forgot the ad read part, the hey, we have to pay bills part of this. So hey guys, guess what? You can also go to shop.smiteproleague.com and get yourself some awesome merchandise.
So
Me and Mifflin are wearing actually one of my favorite shirts. This is genuinely a very comfy shirt. This is our Pride shirt. This one is no longer available for you, but luckily there are still plenty of tees, hoodies, and various and sundry other things for you to get. I know we have beanies as well. So go ahead, shop.smiteproleague.com, get those, and support either us or your favorite team, both if you have the ability to. Of course, I really, again, love this shirt, and I loved the fact that I got to put a Minions win on my list, even though it might be a little bit of a little fluff, a little flub towards the end there. But, I mean, the Kings, I will admit, that was a way more exciting game than I thought it was going to be. And not only, especially with the lead the Leviathans pick up, but to win that way still feels good for the Kings. It's a dub's a dub, but it ripped away from me, Mifflin.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as conclusive as maybe we were hoping, and I think you bring up a good point there. The Leviathans got off to a roaring start in that one. I remember about 18 minutes in that one, I opened up Twitter, I looked over at the clip sky, and I was like, hey, this is over, man. There's no way the Kings are winning off of this one. No, apparently the Kings just got that fortitude to stick around inside of this in one. And I want to give some special shout-outs to exactly who you see on the screen. Captain Twig, for my money, was initiating those fights incredibly well. The Winds of Shamash were disrupting the backline consistently, and it didn't just have to be him. This clip is actually going to be Genetics dropping a wall through a wall perfectly. Hey, good luck, bud. You're not walking away from this one.
Those Ymir walls. Look, it was banned 2 games this set by the Leviathans. I think we just got to see exactly why. They banned the Fafnir over it here. And there's another one, guess what, where it's just going to happen to be none other than Genetics creating a lot of space. I am going to give some shout-outs. Look, obviously these highlights, the winners, the Kings are the ones that should really be at the forefront. But I want to give a lot of props not only to the Leviathans with a role swap kind of back into something normal. Like, Harcourt's not a new solo laner by any means, but something that's kind of the first time in a little while, as well as picking up Zapman. They played phenomenally for the changes that they made, but I mainly want to give some shout-outs to Panatom. Look, 7-3 and 10 this time around, about 19,000 damage, 18.5 if you want to round it up or keep it more even. But he played really well through all 3 games, whether it was a win or a loss. He had a really phenomenal set. Of course, at the end of the day, though, it is the King standing tall, that mental withstanding an onslaught in the early game, and again, beautiful walls from Genetics, beautiful plays from the Kings, have now, Mifflin, awarded them second place in the league.
Congratulations. Finally some separation towards the top here.
Just a little bit,
we've got definitive 1-2-3 now, which feels pretty good.
Slightly. I mean, what is it? It's a 5-0 that could potentially change tomorrow. We'll have to see. And then a 4-1, and then 3-2, 3-2 tied. The Titans potentially trying to pull ahead there, and the Leviathans have a chance to make an upset and maybe even tie it at the very top, because guess who they play next, Mifflin? Oh, none other than your number 1 seed as of right now, the Olympus Bolts, in studio tomorrow. I'm going to harp on that as much as I can because I'm excited. I wasn't here for the last in-studio game, so I want to be here for this one. Honestly, from what I heard, it was one that you were allowed to miss. And tomorrow is definitely going to be one that is going to be an incredibly fun one. But looking at the rest of that, I mean, Dragons versus Kings becomes important. The Dragons are 2-3 right now. Like, pretty much all week has a lot of weight to it.
Yeah, I'm just most excited, legitimately, for this set coming up right now, man. Oni Warriors up against this new Solar Scarab squad where you get Cherio coming back to the SPL, the Penta King, for exactly 1 set here. That's going to be so exciting, but I'll let you do your thing. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about this next set when it happens.
Yeah. Well, once we get around to it, there's a lot to uncover for that. Look, we spent 30 minutes on waiting room, and it still barely felt like it was enough time. Right now, though, it's time for the Kings to shine. Of course, we have them standing by for their post-game interview. Variety, man. How are you guys feeling? Like, you get the win, maybe not exactly how you envisioned it, but the dub's the dub, and you looked phenomenal on the Osiris.
Yeah, obviously it feels great because I think last phase we actually lost them in kind of like the same fashion, really. It was like the first game we stomped them and they didn't get a single kill, and then we got reverse swept, and now this set they stomped us, we didn't get a single kill, and then we reverse swept them. So yeah, it feels good this time.
Yeah, what was the team mental like? I mean, after game number 1, usually, I mean, you see a loss like that, it feels like it should be difficult to bounce back from, but you guys did it wonderfully.
We literally just said that they did this to us last phase. We are going to do it to them this phase, and I think everyone kept their head in the game, and we managed to pull it off. So
just stayed focused up. I guess a very similar question, but then in game 3, I mean, that one had a whole history in and of itself. You guys, it felt like we're falling behind slowly but surely through a few minutes, around 20 minutes. It felt like it was a Leviathans game. What was it in the comms? How was it that you changed your game plan to really tackle that and win the set?
Well, we knew that going into late game, we'd have a bad team fight and a bad team comp in general, so we decided I think we might have lost the fight and they got FG, or we just gave up, and the plan was pretty much to waste as much time on the FG, don't give them any Phoenixes, and as soon as obviously Osiris, when you get Sundering Axe late game, like level 20, you can just 2 tanks or backline and just do like 20% of the HP every 8 seconds, so that was the plan really, just get me late game, get a Netroid and Big Man late game, and we can start contesting objectives, and that's what we did.
Well, hey, man, it was a good win nonetheless. It was a very fun set to watch. Of course, I know like Nika had tweeted out, of course, we always play after the long game 3 sets, but you guys gave us a good show to watch throughout all 3 of those games. So congratulations once again on your win, and for everyone watching, stay tuned because we've got the Scarabs taking on the Warriors right after this. But once again, Variety, thank you.
Thank you very much.